Germany has suspended funding for e-trucks and e-buses. A spokesperson for the Federal Ministry of Digital and Transport stated that not all funding programs can continue as planned. Only projects that have already been approved will continue to be funded. The Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association states that there is no chance of reaching the target by 2025. The association proposes to the Storting to merge the climate targets for both light and heavy vans and set a general objective for these electric vehicles until 2027. Through a £4.9 million investment, over 300 charging points will be installed in the West of England region. A new project will be launched, envisioning the installation of over 300 charging points across the West of England region. Implementation is expected to cost £4.9 million, financed from the Combined Authorities Green Recovery Fund. The French government cut by 20% a subsidy higher-income car buyers can get for purchasing electric and hybrid vehicles. A government regulation lowered the subsidy from €5,000 to €4,000 for the 50% highest income car buyers, but left the subsidy for people on lower incomes at €7,000. Switzerland launches a call for projects for the construction of fast charging stations on national roads. The Federal Roads Office has issued a call for projects to award 5 lots. Each of these lots comprises 11 plots distributed throughout Switzerland. Interested companies are requested to submit their application documents by May the 12th.
Hi everyone, welcome to the third day of the International Mobility Portal Summit, New Models of Charging Infrastructure. I'm Javiera Altamirano, editor of Mobility Portal Europe, and with me is my colleague Luciano Ercoli, marketing analyst. How are you, Luciano?
Thank you, Javiera. Great introduction as always. Welcome everyone to our third day of event. Have to say that I'm very excited and a bit anxious about what speakers are going to say today. We are having people, companies, and associations from France, UK, Germany, Italy, Belgium, Norway, Sweden, Lithuania, Bulgaria, almost every country from Europe. So after this event, you have a wide perspective of what's happening in the sector and what are companies expecting for this new year. Javiera, can you tell us a bit about the speakers?
Yes, sure. So the third day of the event organized by Mobility Portal Europe is titled Trends of Leading European E-Mobility Companies, Announcement, Projects, New Technologies, and discussions about the future of charging networks will be the focal points guiding the 4 panels of this summit. So the first panel is titled The World is Betting on High Power Charging and Megawatt Charging System. Participating in it will be Marek Gutt-Mostowy, CEO and founder at Willbert, Glenn Leveger, Head of Business Development and Sales for Europe at AMPECO, and it will be moderated by me. And the second panel is titled Government Strategies for Charging Infrastructure in Europe. Participating will be Philippe Vangeel, Secretary General at the European Association of Electromobility, AVERE, Sveinung André Kvalø, Senior Advisor at the Norwegian EV Association, Costagliola, Senior Principal at Cityfi, Krzysztof Burda, President at the Polish Chamber of Electromobility Development, and it will be moderated by Ines Platini, journalist at Mobility Portal Europe. The third panel is titled How Do CPOs Combat Range Anxiety? Participating in this panel will be Sander Girischer, CEO at Plug Invest, Oost Parankut, co-founder at Stuart Energy, Axel van Lombik, Managing Director at Megacharge, and it will be moderated by Florencia Guglielmetti, editor at Mobility Portal Latin America. And the last and fourth panel is titled The Role of Large Companies Installing Charging Points. Participating in this panel will be Rain Juriado, Policy Officer at the European Commission, Asif Ghaffur, CEO and co-founder at BEB, Polina Miklavola, co-CEO at Knot, and Luca Rossini, CEO and co-founder at Rossini Energy, and it will be moderated by me. So, Luciano, would you like to tell us about the latest updates from Mobility Portal Group?
Of course, Javiera. You know that information never ends in our portal. Our great team of journalists will be doing an extensive press coverage of this event. So you should follow us on social media to stay up to date with the latest information, not only of this event, but also what's happening every day in the sector. You can find us on LinkedIn as Mobility Portal Europe and on Instagram as Mobility Portal EU. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, please click on the subscribe button so you don't lose our next events. Yes, because we are working on our next events. We are having an upcoming event on 14, 15, and 16 of May, our International Mobility Portal Summit, Investments by Leading Companies in Zero-Emission Fleets. Also, in June, we are having our virtual showroom for electric bus and trucks. This showroom will come together with a new edition of the eMobility book. If you don't know it yet, last December we launched the first edition of our eMobility book. It was an ebook about charging infrastructure. Now we are launching a new edition of this ebook, especially for buses and trucks. So in case you want to participate in our next events or be part of these digital reports, please feel free to contact us. You can email us at commercial@mobilityportal.eu. And is there anything I'm forgetting, Javiera?
Yes, Luciano. This year we will attend events and conventions held in different countries to provide comprehensive journalistic coverage. All the information will be available on our portal and social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. On the 4th and 5th of April, I will be present at the Nordic EV Summit in Oslo. And close to the date, Aileen Pedrotti, the editor of Spain, and Valentina Prieto, marketing analyst, will attend the e-car show in Madrid. Furthermore, Gaston Fenes, the director of Mobility Portal Group, will be present next week at the Foconauto event in IFEMA, and in June, he will attend Power to Drive. For those attending who wish to coordinate an interview or meeting with the portal's representative, please don't hesitate to contact us. Now let's continue with this event and stay tuned as the first panel is about to begin. Hi everyone, we begin the first panel of the event called The World is Betting on High Power Charging and Megawatt Charging System, in which participate Marek Gutt-Mostowy, CEO and founder at Willbert, and Glenn Lebeder, Head of Business Development and Sales for Europe at AMPECO. Before we start with these questions, I would like to you to tell us about your companies. So, Marek, how are you? Would you like to start and tell us about your company?
Absolutely. Good morning. I'm very fine, thank you. So I'm the CEO and founder of Willbert by Euroloop. The name of the company is Euroloop, but the name of the brand is Willbert from William Gilbert, who coined the term electricity. A long time ago, we focus exclusively on high-power DC fast chargers, and in particular on very efficient chargers using silicon carbide technology. With which we, I believe, when it comes to the EV chargers, spearheaded a bit of a revolution. There's more companies right now working on silicon carbide technology right now, which makes me very happy. Our recent addition to the portfolio is the AMPECO 2, so the charger which can charge up to 720 kilowatts. This is already suitable not only for passenger vehicles, but also for medium and heavy duty trucks. And all those products, hardware products, are accompanied by a Hockey platform, which is meant for technical monitoring of the chargers, making sure that they stay up and running, and they provide high reliability. And also we have products dedicated to payment settling, in particular those meant to comply with the AVERE regulation, where a means of direct payments is needed. And for that particular regulation and need simply from the customers, we developed PIRE, which is our own dedicated system for settling direct payments using a standard payment terminal. However, it's nicely integrated into the user interface, where you can choose the pre-authorization amount for the charging session and also request an invoice, so you can operate the charger without a need for an external RFID card or an application, and hence the usability of those solutions is very high. So that is, in a nutshell, what we are working on and what we are focused on.
Okay, we are going to talk about the solutions of Euroloop by Willbert next. Now, Glenn, how are you? Could you tell us about AMPECO?
Hello, hi. Thanks for having me and for having AMPECO. I'm fine, thank you. So just to introduce AMPECO. So AMPECO is a software company, is a leading software company with actually a global reach. We have customers across the globe on all continents. And basically what we do in a nutshell is really we focus on enabling charge point operators and eMobility service providers to scale the EV charging related operations, right? So we do that in different ways. So as a software company, what's critical for us is really to be able to support. I know today we are focusing on fast charging, but we really support our clients in a wide variety of use cases. Could be home charging, destination charging, public charging, and it's really our DNA to be able to to enable this flexibility. And when you're present in more than 20 countries, you have different regulations, different use cases, and this is really where we are very strong. This is really our core strength. What else can I tell you about AMPECO? Yeah, I mean, we'll talk later about the more specific DC networks and how we can support charge point operators operating in this environment. But yeah, this is what I can tell you as an introduction for AMPECO.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. So let's start with the first question. Marek, Willbert is seeking new customers interested in acquiring the 720 kilowatts charger. So why should they acquire it? What differential does this product offer? Which markets are they interested in?
Absolutely. So I would like to start with saying that we already have customers who have ordered this product, and we have first installations happening of 600 kilowatt system in Belgium with one of our major accounts, Sparky, a big incoming CPO in Belgium market. And obviously we are looking for expansion. At the moment we have customers in 7 different markets. Most of them are in the European Union, one in Norway, and also one in the United States. So this is where we are present at the moment. And we are looking for more parties who are interested in absolutely cutting-edge technology, high-power solution, yet the ones which are efficient not only on the power conversion side, but also in terms of installation cost, maintenance cost, and OPEX cost in general. Why is that? So we as a company started with development early on of standalone chargers. So these are the chargers, high power chargers that contain power electronics and everything needed to serve the user within one device. So this became a part of the market, as opposed to the distributed chargers where you have power cabinets with power electronics separately from the user units. Both approaches have there's pros and cons. However, we saw a need for something which will be combining the pros of all those solutions. And as such, we develop a system called standalone hub. So it comes from the fact that we have two standalone chargers that we can connect together. And as such, they become one system and they share the power and they share the functionality of the chargers. So just to give you an example, a typical standalone charger, usually you can provide anywhere between 300 to 400 kilowatts. But if you combine two of those, as in our case, you can provide up to 720 kilowatts. And it is completely flexible. So you have no limitations. Any power module from one charger, we have a granularity of 60 kilowatts, can be connected to any of the plugs. And in total, we can have a maximum of 8 plugs coming just from 2 chargers. So basically, one charger can serve 4 cars at the same time, and the other charger can also serve 4 times at the same time. Once you connect them through the S-Hub system, you're basically have a situation where you have one system that can dynamically share power, yet all you need is basically 2 foundations, 2 AC connections to those chargers, and only one simple DC and Ethernet connection between the chargers, and you have extremely powerful and flexible system, which is suitable, as I said, not only for passengers vehicles meeting their peak power requirements, but also for medium and heavy duty trucks. And as such, our customers can basically bet on one product and can serve and use it for many use cases. And also from the company perspective, for us, it's very important to stay lean, not to have extremely wide product portfolio, because that later on proves to be very problematic from the operations perspective to support so many different product lineups. It is important that we remain focused. We want to serve our customers as best as possible and maintain the highest reliability in the market when it comes to those deployed chargers.
Okay, thank you, Marek. Now, Glenn, could you tell us more about what initiatives is AMPECO currently working on? For example, new solutions.
So yeah, I won't be too specific. I mean, we are working, as you can imagine, as a software company, we have quite a comprehensive roadmap. So we're working on many things. But as I mentioned in the introduction, what is critical for us is really to be to enable this complexity, like to make it possible to for example, to charge point operators in Norway, focusing on home charging, to be able to control tens of thousands of chargers. That's one case. Or to enable a DC network in a large DC network in Western Europe, to be able to have specific payment terminals. So if we focus on DC networks, where we are really focusing on right now, it's this topic of payment. Because of course, I think this is one of the challenges we see. I mean, it's true in France, but I think that applies to most of Europe. Is that a lot of chargers don't have payment terminals, for example, right? So you can't recharge your car you cannot pay for a charging session as easily as you would do for groceries. And I think it should be the case, right? It should be the vision that payment should be effortless. But it's not yet the case. So this is where we are really. This is what we're working on. So, for example, payment terminal integration, payment service provider integrations, right? Because different operators work with different payment service providers. Roaming is a very big topic, because when we talk about DC networks, of course, it could be a private network, could be for a fleet depot, for example, but it can also be a DC focused CPO, charge point operators, opening these chargers to the public. And then there is a topic of roaming, which is opening the chargers to all the different e-mobility service providers in the market. And that can be very complex, right? Especially in countries like, you take France, Germany, you have a lot of operators, you have hundreds of operators, and you basically have to connect all these operators together. So there are some specialized players doing this, right? The roaming hubs. But what we, AMPECO, have to do is we have to make sure that all this integration work, and that if I have a charge card, I can charge on any network, right? So those, I would say, well, like we are not trying to work on really like futuristic kind of features. We want to be really excellent in those basic components, right? And I mean, because if those components are not in place at scale, we cannot even, talk about, EV charging. We first have to focus on those, and then I think there will be other topics coming, like, for example, AI, right? We are working on, predictive maintenance, right? Because one of the challenges we see today, especially in DC networks, is that the reliability of chargers is kind of poor, right? Still today, I think things are getting better, but I think the quality of the chargers and also of the maintenance behind it is not great. So I think it's also important, we believe, to try to work on, try to use all the wealth of data we have to try to build AI, algorithms to try to do predictive maintenance. But it's only one topic among others. Yeah.
Okay, so AMPECO offers an electric vehicle charging platform for charging point manufacturers now. So what benefits does it offer? And could you mention a successful case, an example, specifically for the platform for charging point manufacturers?
The question is for me?
Yeah, for you, Glenn.
Okay. We work with, as I said, with more than 150 clients around the globe. We have clients in Europe, in Australia, in the Middle East, in the US, in South America. I don't have a specific case maybe to mention, but what I'm saying is we work with, for example, with DC networks operator or public charging networks who have thousands of chargers in the ground, right? We work with home charging B2B operators who have tens of thousands of chargers. So this is, we are extremely, let's say, experienced, and I think right now we are probably the most mature software company in the industry.
Okay, Glenn, thank you. So, Marek, what types of customers are ideal for the company, and what are the ideal locations where they seek to have their products installed, like parkings, hotels, highways, public roads, and why?
Yeah, so absolutely our product is modular. So you can start with a 30 kilowatt charger in case of AMPECO 1 or 60 kilowatt in case of AMPECO 2. And as your needs grow, you can later on add modules, which is a very simple operation. You basically slide it in. In case of AMPECO 1 person can do that. So you can, let's say, if you're a hotel owner, that could be a potential solution for you. Today, you can start with a 30 kilowatt charger, and as your needs grow, more people have electric vehicles, and you'll have more customers who need to charge, then you can add modules on top of that. So basically, the market for us is quite wide and quite large. However, definitely at the moment, our ideal customer is a fairly new CPO who doesn't have yet a lot of legacy solutions and can focus on almost entire hardware and software package from us. Obviously, we also work with different backend providers, and this can be done concurrently, but certain features like technical monitoring for DC chargers, I believe, has to be very, very bespoke and done specifically for a given charger brand, because DC chargers are very much different from AC chargers. And OCPP, the standard communication protocol, was primarily done with that in mind. And certain diagnostics tools are simply not there for DC chargers. So all in all, we like to work with new CPOs, CPOs who like to use our software stack. They see the value in having a vertical integration of not only hardware and firmware, but also of different software solutions, because then you have a clarity what is actually happening within your network. I can give you an interesting example. For instance, we provide SIM cards from one provider that we work with our chargers. Usually the standard solution in the market is that if you have a different backend, then the SIM card comes from that backend. However, quite often there might be some problem with the connectivity. There's issues like signal storms. And we have it built into the platform that if we receive a signal from the SIM provider that there's going to be some issue in certain part of Europe, we can quickly communicate that information not only to the CPO, but also to the end user and display information. For instance, we are experiencing right now connectivity issues, and as such, the final customer, the driver, will be aware, okay, if the charger has some problems, let's say settling the transaction, at least I know that this is due to malfunctioning internet connection. And there's a lot of benefits when it comes to that vertical integration. Obviously, there has to be interoperability. It cannot be entirely walled garden, but I believe for DC chargers, a slightly different approach of vertical integration is definitely needed to provide high reliability, as observed by the example of the Tesla supercharging network, where they go a step further and have also integration with the car itself. Then obviously everything becomes much easier. So in summary, new CPOs without too many headaches from the past, where they can start with a blank sheet of paper. This is our ideal customer.
So this panel is very interesting for CPOs seeking new solutions. And then now let's talk about the megawatt charging system. Glenn, what do you think are the trends in charger infrastructure in France, the country where you reside? Do you notice any interest in promoting the megawatt charging system?
Yes, so first I can give you an overview of France in terms of where it stands in e-mobility. I think it's important to understand that. So France is very specific country, quite unique. I think it's the country, actually it's factual. It's a country that has created the biggest amount of subsidies for e-mobility in Europe, because our president Emmanuel Macron, that has always been on the top of his agenda. So he's even, very close to a French entrepreneur doing e-mobility. So we are very fortunate. We have a great government supporting very, very strongly e-mobility. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share. And not only that, we also have public financing institutions also pouring a lot of money in startups and scale-ups. So I mean, I don't know if you followed what happened in France in the last 6 months, but we've had some really high fundraising from startups, from scale-ups, averaging 200, 300 million. I mean, I don't know any other places in Europe like this. So it means that in terms of deployment of DC networks, not only DC networks, by the way, but also home charging, France now has become one of the key countries in Europe, and I think for DC chargers, probably the number one. So I mean, I can tell you that the knife, if you're looking for a good location for a DC charger in France, it's becoming increasingly difficult, because like most of the main companies now are in France, right? Most of the DC charging CPOs are in France. Yeah, so I want to say that it's France is a very EV charging friendly country, more and more. And in regards to the megawatt charging, well, first of all, I'm not so much an expert in truck charging. Really, the focus of AMPECO and my focus is really on charging, let's say, in a generic way. So it could be AC, it could be DC charging. But what I can tell you is that, of course, we see that some specialized companies are really investing very hard now on this truck charging topic. From my point of view, it's not yet something very significant. Why? Because there are many challenges. It's not only about the cost of those chargers. It's also about the location, because when you build such a megawatt charging, the whole environment has to be specific. The grid connection is another challenge. So what I'm saying is, right now, if I look at France, but it applies to Western Europe in general, I think that we are nicely transitioning from AC charging to DC charging, right? For example, if you go to even a small town in France, right? 10 years ago, it was only you would find one 11 kilowatts AC charger, right? Which was working 50% of the time. And now we have DC chargers in these locations. So it's a very nice development. But megawatt chargers, I think we're not there yet. It's a really new topic. And in regards to the value of having such a big chargers for trucks, I'm not yet entirely sure, but yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Now, Marek, do you plan to offer chargers with high power outputs or even linked to the megawatt charging system? And what aspects should be considered to progress in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a lot of requests when it comes to what are our plans in terms of megawatt charging, and also what do we think about megawatt charging, because there's many aspects to consider. Not only the layout of the location, but obviously the power requirements, the voltage requirements, the current requirements, and also where the sockets, the plugs, will be located on the vehicles. So everyone is right now trying to obtain that information and align on something, because the time to apply for funding in certain countries is now to build those hubs for trucks. So everyone is trying to get as much data as possible. And from my experience so far, I would say that the AMPECO for the current generation of the trucks which are entering the market is ready. You don't need anything else. We have a charger configuration in offer with a connector which can support 850 amps, and the current more than anything is needed for high power charging. And one important aspect is also that the new generation of EVs which are going to enter the market soon will also have much higher current requirements, so above 500 amps, which is currently, let's say, the state of the art for current infrastructure. So unfortunately, we'll see one more transition, I believe, when it comes to fast chargers, where they will have to support currents above 500 amps. The trucks in particular, the challenge at the moment is not necessarily connected with some crazy peak power, maybe with the exception of Tesla Semi, which is supposed to be charging up at the peak power of 700 kilowatts. And again, that can be provided by AMPECO. It's more about the length of the charging session, because those cars, those trucks, they have very large batteries. So the charger has to be capable of providing, let's say, 200, 300 kilowatts for a very extended period of time, 1 hour or 2 hours. So basically, this is the requirement at the moment. There's a big looming question in terms of MCS. What will be the architecture of the track batteries in the future? At the moment, we are dealing only with 400 volt and 800 volt architectures. Also, in different configurations, certain cars, they split them, battery packs for charging. Sometimes they connect them for charging to be able to charge at the higher voltages. MCS allows voltages much higher, and as such gives more flexibility to the truck manufacturers to spec their batteries, and that may turn out to be a massive problem from the infrastructure perspective, where we don't have chargers which can work above 1000 volts. And if the truck manufacturers decide to go above 1000 volts, again, we'll have the same situation as in the early days, where we only had 400 volts cars. Suddenly there's a new generation with 800 volts. and either the CPOS have to adapt. That is obviously expensive because you have to basically replace the entire charger, or in the beginning, at least, the car manufacturers realized that need and decided that they will use voltage doublers or other solutions to be able to charge from the old infrastructure. And then again, we'll have two standards, the MCS and the CCS. Many of the trucks coming to the market, they are with the CCS. And I believe only 2 years from now, we'll see trucks coming with the MCS standard on scale. So it's a difficult situation to navigate through, and I'm not jealous of CPOs in this regard. We're trying to do our best to support them with our knowledge, and also with elasticity in terms of how the charger can be spec'd. So you can definitely expect from us a charger with MCS and the CCS connectors, so that they can build proper base for the trucks in the future, and they're not limited to one standard or the other, because unfortunately, at least during this transition period, we will have to again serve all of the technologies, all of the needs, as we already seen that in the past with CHAdeMO and CCS, and currently in the US market, obviously with NACS and CCS and CHAdeMO. The situation over there is even more complicated than in Europe. So that is, in short, the situation from my perspective. In terms of higher powers, I can't share anything when it comes to that. I believe that at the moment the AMPECO is the right solution for the operators who are thinking about charging trucks.
Okay, Marek, if you have to choose only one connector, only one, what do you think will be the prevailing connector for trucks worldwide?
So if we for trucks, that's a more difficult question because I don't drive one on a daily basis. I would like in case of passenger cars, I would definitely go for NACS because I think it is the most compact and the most thought through connector of them all, that doesn't have all the limitations coming from the legacy solutions trying to combine two systems into one plug. MCS is also well thought out, so I believe eventually this will be the solution. The big question is though, what voltages are we going to expect, and let's say if the truck manufacturers decide to go for 1500 volts, are they going to be splitting their packs for charging so that they can be charged using the infrastructure which is out there? Or do we need to develop a new generation of power electronics so that we adapt to those higher voltages? And that again will be a huge development cost, and it will definitely slow things down. So I think it's great that the standard, which is MCS, provides that flexibility, but we have to be aware that actually using that opportunity will have a lot of issues will show up on the way there. So we have to be careful how we choose the options which are available to us.
Yeah, I see. And Glenn, what difficulties does the charging infrastructure sectors face in France, and how could they be resolved? Glenn, can you turn on your microphone?
Yes, yes, there are a few challenges indeed. I mean, what I say about France, that really applies to any European countries. I think, as I mentioned, reliability is unfortunately it's still I think a main issue, right? So how do we solve this? Well, as a software company, what we can do for this is, of course, to make sure that we can that we have like the right reporting for alarms, right? Coming from the right reporting and the right automation for alarms coming from the chargers. Also to have the right APIs, the right integration with workforce management systems, so the field crews can go on site fast. So this is what we can, as a software provider, this is what we can enable. One other challenge that I see is that, of course, again, is the topic of payments. Charging right now is not uniform. Depends where you are, but sometimes you have a payment terminal, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can charge with an RFID card, with roaming. Sometimes roaming is not available. So it's really, it's still a little bit, the Far West in a way. We are not yet, the EV charging landscape is not yet uniform. So that's a key challenge. And of course, this is where we play a key part here, is that we thanks to what we offer as features and also as integration, we can really make sure that roaming actually works, and that payment terminals, depending regardless of the brand, can be integrated to our platform, right? And there are, of course, I think, there are other challenges. I think one other challenge that I see is not really technical. It's more related to the funding, because I mentioned the subsidies, and now we see that the subsidies are drying out, right? Not only in France but everywhere. So I mean, in France they are not completely scrapped, but they're reduced because we have to finance, like defense. We have to finance other things. So I would say this is a challenge. This is not yet. We haven't seen yet really the full effects of that, but I think it will come. In the sales of EVs, and then of course at the end of the day impacting the infrastructure. And also one of the topic is, I mentioned, like, there's a lot of money being raised in France right now by companies to deploy EV charging. Of course, at some point, these companies, these charge point operators, will have to be profitable. Will have to make a return. And what we don't know right now is really when it will happen and if it will happen. So there is still a question of profitability, and also a little bit of speculation, right? We don't know. Those companies have to prove themselves, these charge point operators. So I would say, as a summary, those are the main challenges I see in Europe.
Okay, and Glenn, a while back you mentioned that the Biden administration is considering slowing down the shift for electric vehicles. What measures should Biden replicate for European governments to accelerate the e-mobility, and what measures should Europe replicate for the United States? I remember you mentioned the NACS connector.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm not a full expert on the US market. I'm really focusing on Europe. But from what I know, of course, is that what Biden did with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. I think it's such a huge amount of investment, right? I mean, I don't think Europe can do that. Europe cannot match. Doesn't have the financial firepower that the US have. So I think the US, of course, we have to be clear as well that the US is quite behind, right? It's quite behind Europe for EV charging. So I mean, Europe has been subsidizing for years, right? The US is only starting now. But I think one thing that we could in Europe that we could do is to try to really at EU level to try to really increase the investments. That could be something that we, and actually it's even a broader question. It's not only about EV charging. It's about sustainable technologies in general. I think what the US is doing is the right thing. I think the state should invest a lot of money, and I think Europe is not doing enough. But yeah, let's see. And I think the other way around, of course, Europe has been leading the way for EV charging for years, and I think the US should really look at what we have done in terms of, like, for example, like all these companies we have right now in Europe deploying EV charging. For example, if you have a DC network, like finding the best location, I think those companies are very good at that, right? If you take all the pure players, for example, if you look at Allego, Electra, these companies, they are super good at finding the right spot to install their charger to have the highest amount of transactions, right? I think in the US they're not there yet. right? They are not. First of all, there are not that many networks, and I think this knowledge has to be transferred from Europe to America.
Yeah, I see. And Marek, more and more companies are adopting the North American charging standard. Do you consider that the European companies should start innovating in this connector? Do you think the North America charging standard could prevail in Europe?
I hope not. Despite the fact that I like the connector, as I said, this is the most compact and the most ergonomic connector. The burden it would cause on CPOs, on manufacturers, and eventually on drivers will be enormous. So I think that Europe has done right in the very beginning to pick CCS. Maybe it's not the perfect standard, but it was there early on. It made the other manufacturers switch to that connector, and we don't have the very messy situation which is currently in the US. So definitely, I hope that we will never switch to NACS in Europe.
Okay, and now I would like to give each of you 1 minute of closing remarks. Mark, if you want, you could start.
Absolutely. So I would like to say that we at Willbert are working hard to address some of the issues which we observe in the industry, and that mostly relates to reliability and huge capital investments required for high power charging infrastructure. We hope that with our new product AMPECO, this is the first charger of its kind with fully integrated payment system, dynamic power allocation, high efficiency. We bring to the market a solution which is ready for the global uptake of electric vehicles. And I truly hope that in the future, anyone will be able to charge an electric car, not only experts, and we'll see a lot of those vehicles all throughout Europe and across the globe. And I think this is our common responsibility as an industry to get there and to make it as fast as possible.
Okay, now Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, we are super excited to be in this journey. I mean, we see that, and we are only really at the very beginning, right? If you imagine the amount of charging stations that will be in the ground in 20 years' time, we are very far. I mean, we are only at the very beginning. But even today, what we see is that there have been some major improvements in how charge point operators actually really operate the network and enable. For example, we haven't talked about energy management, but it's another great topic, which I think, I mean, for us, that the most important thing is really to enable drivers to charge at the right price, the right place, but also for the whole energy ecosystem to be able to tap in this, this huge this flexibility potential that the charging infrastructure is offering, right? So I mean, for us, this is really, even though the context is not like right now the best, not super positive, but we think that we still see the sales of EVs growing. We see the deployment of charging stations growing. We see new players, for example, retailers, right? Now, who call me and say, "Hey, Glenn, I want to become a CPO." So we see some very nice evolutions in the market of key players who actually wants to really take full control of the operations. So it's a very exciting time, and I think AMPECO is really best positioned to enable those especially large scale operators to really provide EV charging at scale.
Okay, so Marek and Glenn, thank you for participating in this panel. It has been very interesting discussion. We will produce news based on this conversation, so stay tuned. And for those who are watching, I want to remind you to follow Mobility Portal on LinkedIn and Instagram and to connect with me and the speakers. And stay tuned as the second panel titled Government Strategies for Charging Infrastructure in Europe is about to begin, which will be moderated by my colleague Ines Platini. So thank you, Glenn and Marek.
Thank you for having me.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
Okay. Hi everyone, I am Ines Platini and I will be moderating the second panel on government strategies for charging infrastructure in Europe. Thank you all for joining us and a special thank you to the speakers for participating. In this panel will participate Philippe Vangeel, Secretary General of AVERE, Krzysztof Burda, President of PIRE, Costagliola, Senior Principal of Cityfi, and Sveinung André Kvalø, Senior Advisor at the Norwegian EV Association. I hope I pronounce everything correctly. Welcome everyone and hello.
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 Good afternoon from our side of the world.
Okay, to start with this panel, I would like to begin with Philippe. I would like to ask you in what initiatives is AVERE currently engaged to expedite the transition towards e-mobility in Europe, particularly in accelerating the deployment of charging points?
Well, very good question. It's, I would say, our daily activities as an association for electromobility. We want to guarantee that the EV user has a smooth experience as possible. And we hope that we can integrate the charge infrastructure where necessary. Of course, this is a broad scope. We work on European level, so we talk on a daily basis, is maybe not real, but very regular with policymakers on the European level to talk about the challenges, what the issues are, and which way we should go. Now, this can go from technical standards, it can go to recommendations, how to do public tendering for public charging infrastructure, but also just about the awareness, how the technology is evolving and what the needs are. So our focus is really getting the people in an EV and that the experience is as smoothly as possible. This can be split in two main pillars. Of course, you have public charging, and that's also the most visible aspect of charging that people experience in the streets. But we may not underestimate the private charging. People can charge at home or at work. This is, for us, one of the first principles that should be enabled. Getting people really driving an EV.
Perfect. Thank you, Philippe. Now, I would like to ask Sveinung. It's okay? Pronounce? Okay. I would like to ask you what project is the association currently undertaking to promote the development of electric mobility?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us. We are a drivers organization, EV Drivers Association, and with 120,000 members with a strong environmental focus. Our goal is to electrify all transport as fast as possible for the benefit of the environment. So that's our main project. I think we are working on many levels to secure ambitious climate targets for transportation and also to improve less ambitious targets. So in Norway now we have a target for passenger cars to be completely emission-free, all new cars already 2025 next year. So it's only 10 months to reach 100%. That's our goal, our government's goal. And also for trucks, we have a 2030 target, 100%. So, of course, we need to work with this. We are working with policies. And an example, to reach the 100% target next year, we need to change the tax rules for leasing companies. So this is something that we have suggested. We had written a report. We proposed this 4 years ago. Now it's a public hearing where we're participating also in the media. But we, of course, get a lot of opposition from, in this case, the leasing companies. But I think we really need to look into all details of how things are regulated, and this is one example of what we do. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Now, I would like to ask you in which European countries does Cityfi operate, and how are you assisting these countries in addressing the transition?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Before I get into that, just a little bit about Cityfi. We are a global innovation and strategy consultancy. We're based in the United States. I happen to run the firm's European operation out of Utrecht in the Netherlands. But Cityfi does operate across Europe on matters related to civic and mobility innovation, zero emissions, transition, and digital transformation. Our sweet spot tends to be in the work with and forging connections across the public and private sectors. So we tend to exercise levers of change to ensure that there's the public good that's being achieved, but also there is a profit ability for the private sector. So with this sweet spot, this is kind of exactly where we tend to operate, both in North America and Europe. For the public sector clients that we work with that are trying to rapidly deploy charging infrastructure and focus on zero emissions delivery, we focus on helping writing strategic policy changes that need to be made to ensure that charging infrastructure is actually getting to place. We help cities, transit agencies, and other public sector clients envision what a network of EVSE and multimodal charging might look like. We help them through procurement strategy. We identify funding, and we do help cities navigate some of the complex governance challenges that you typically will see in these types of projects, serving as intermediaries across public and private sector, really to aim trying to remove some of that complexity and the lack of clarity that you typically see on who actually manages and controls the deployment of charging infrastructure. On the private sector side, we work with EV charging infrastructure providers, CPOs, OEMs, on a range of different project areas, including building partnerships, building consortia with the public sector. We create brand awareness and go-to-market strategies for up-and-coming startups. And we also help companies navigate complex funding environments and procurement landscapes. Ultimately, what we try to do is to build trust across the aisle between public and private sector to ensure that both are getting results, and that is essentially the thesis of Cityfi.
That's great. Thank you very much. And now, Krzysztof, I would like you to tell me what project is PIRE currently undertaking to promote the development of electric mobility.
Hello everyone again. Thank you very much for having me today, and thank you for this question because the Polish market is still at the first level of development, and we are observe rapidly growing the market of electromobility at this moment, and our initiatives are related to this market. As my previous speaker said, promoting and advising the market is really necessary. But in Poland, I think still education, especially companies which are not involved in electromobility, is really important. And we are do that. We are telling them how they can use the electromobility to achieve their, for example, climate goals, because some companies would like to report of ESG, etc., and they are using electromobility as a tool. So this is important to get some knowledge how can do that. From the other side, we see the electromobility is a completely new branch of economy, and this is the completely new sector with huge potential. In Poland, we've seen that the battery sector grow up in almost 5 years, and at this moment, this is one of the biggest market of the production of battery cells worldwide, and we see the potential with completely new technologies in electromobility in startup sectors. So this year we are start the eMobility incubator for startups, for technology companies in Zielona Góra. And now we are focusing on building the ecosystem with founders, experts, mentors, VC funds, etc., to help the market growth and build a good economy.
Thank you. Since you mentioned that, Krzysztof, I would like to ask you, what is the current status of the charging infrastructure in Poland?
As I mentioned before, the market is rapidly growing, and now we have around 6,000 charging stations. And fun fact is the increase of DC charging stations is now higher than AC charging stations. I think the reason is first we had some subsidies, and now we are seeing the deployment of these charging stations, which were financed or co-financed by these subsidies. And the second one, Poland have to force some AVERE regulations, and some companies see the potential in DC charging stations at this moment, not only through 10T network, but of course in the city. For example, now I charge my car exactly in the city center.
Okay, thank you. Ivan, I would like to ask you, which is the overview in Europe about the public charging infrastructure?
Sure. Yeah. So Europe is a bit ahead of the United States. I think someone in the previous panel had mentioned that it is also a bit behind countries like China. At the end of the year last year, Europe, the EU countries had roughly 650,000 public chargers, and if you count the non-EU countries, that jumps to about 775,000. I'll note that I think a quarter of those chargers, public chargers, are located in the Netherlands. So the Netherlands has done a pretty fantastic job rolling out public charging infrastructure across the country. You might think that's a lot, but the construction trend really needs to continue at an even faster pace. It's 650,000 chargers is not enough to keep up with consumer demand. And so by the end of 2025, we need to see roughly 1 million public chargers. And that would be easily the largest year-over-year growth in installation to date. I don't really care much about the total public charging market, because we know that subsidy levels and growing efficiencies in rolling out chargers is going to see the pace of installation increase. I'm more concerned about access. I was reading a consumer survey from 2023. It was put out by OECD. It basically suggested that a third of European respondents believe that they don't have charging infrastructure within 3 kilometers of where they live. And on top of that, even when you live within proximity to a public charger, it's likely that a third or a fourth of your options are actually not available 24/7. There's some access restrictions. So access is an even more critical issue in my mind, rather than the total growth in supply. Obviously, a lot can be said about expanding charging infrastructure, but in my opinion, and this is kind of a creative response, 3 of the strategies that really resonate for me in the work I do with my clients is 1, reducing friction and amping up cooperation. 2 is targeted subsidies. And 3 is really thinking about the end user's needs and implying human-centered network design as the network continues to expand. Friction and cooperation is really kind of near and dear to my heart. I was in a former life, the Seattle public charging program manager for the city of Seattle. I know the experience of building up goodwill with the private sector and hoping that they come to market and play in our sandbox, but also then them understanding that it's really difficult to get a permit and to get approvals to see infrastructure in the ground. So, we really need to ensure that there's really robust engagement between local government and charging point developers, get them in the same room early so that as scoping happens, it leads to clarity, it leads to creative problem solving when problems come to bear, and you can get to installation sooner than later. I think as a general practice, streamlining process and removing barriers so that we reduce the service time and the planning time related to installation, that's critical. Stockholm is really the poster child for this. Generally it takes 12 to 18 months for DC fast chargers to be installed, and they made it really clear that they wanted to remove some of the friction and streamlining processes so that they can see more of a 6 to 8 month installation timeline. I think there's a lot that can be said about subsidies and really targeting them in different ways. For example, thinking about how to tailor subsidies and getting investments into areas or geographies where it might be needed most. Thinking about specific populations where subsidy might need to be prioritized a little bit more. Half of Europeans live in apartments without dedicated parking facilities. So, ignoring that market and ignoring the barriers that they have to accessing charging is only a limitation to adoption. I think on the human-centered design side, we really do need to do a better job of connecting with the end consumer, before you continue to build out your charging network. I think the goal is product market fit instead of just getting product out there. Perhaps direct to consumer subsidy needs to be a little bit more targeted to areas where there's a little bit higher reluctance to transition, or there might be serious financial or ergonomic barriers, and then you don't know that really without the human-centered design, the design thinking processes, the market research to understand what the needs truly are.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sveinung, I would like to ask you if you can tell us how is the current status of the charging infrastructure in Norway, and which actors stand out in this sector, and in what initiatives are they working on?
Thanks. I think it's important that we even mentioned that we need to make sure that people can charge where they are parked most of the time. So we all know that cars, they just stay for on average 23 hours per day. So we need to put up a system where charging is accessible there. And this is the real difference from a petrol car, where you're dependent on gas stations. You're not that for electric vehicles. And in Norway, 80% of all charging is being done at home or near your home where you're parked. But of course, I think the fast charging network is also very important. We saw that in Norway that you needed this network in order to get people to buy cars in the first place, to buy electric cars in the first place. We now have 7,900 fast chargers, and we have a fully commercial network of fast chargers around the country. And 25% of the whole fleet in Norway, passenger cars, is now fully electric. So we had an initial subsidy program, which was really small scale, and finished by 2017, when only 5% of the cars were fully electric. And most of the fast chargers after that have been built by private companies at their own risk. So the strength of our system is that we have a robust market, range anxiety is gone. But of course, we still see that the users, they have some problems with cumbersome payment solutions, broken chargers, and some queues at smaller locations. Here, Recharge and Tesla are the largest CPOs in our country. But what we can learn is that this is doable. We know this now, and it's a fully viable commercial market. We have spent a lot more on supporting car purchases than the charging infrastructure, and the pace of new chargers is higher than ever without subsidies. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Before we continue, I would like to remind you that this is a debate, so if you want to interrupt and add something when it's not your turn, it's no problem. You can do it. I don't have to ask everything. you can say what you want also. So now that we have like an overview about Poland, the Netherlands, and Norway, I would like to ask Philippe, which countries do you think are the forefront of charging point installations in Europe? And if you believe that the government incentives have played a role in their prominence?
Well, I have some comments on this because we are so number focused, and indeed, as already mentioned by Ivan, in the Netherlands we have the highest concentration of charging points. There is also the reason why. Sveinung shared with us that the number of charging points in Norway is a big country with the highest penetration of EVs, and nevertheless such a little of compared with numbers, such a little of charging points, and there is a reasoning why. Already mentioned, they have much more opportunity of home charging, so we really have to keep in mind that there is not a magic formula that fits all of us. And then if you compare the countries, I would say compare the regions, how is the region developed and how do we need to implement charge infrastructure in that region. And that's how we can achieve a proper or serving the people that are living there. So is a low charging point number compared with another country, or is that country lacking behind? It's not a guarantee, definitely not. Also the awareness opportunity of home charging should kept in mind here. Now, I also want to bring up a positive message here because me following the alternatives, European Alternative Fuels Observatory, we're following this data very closely. And last year, we have done a big jump in Europe, and the growth last year in public charging, I have the numbers in front of me, is 176,405 following the official registration. And this is a significant number. And is it a question of the capacity of building out this charge infrastructure? I don't think that there is really the pain point. The pain point is really the process to get this charge infrastructure installed and getting them on the street. And this process is permitting issues, grid connections, which are going very slow. So if you see that 176,000 number from last year, that means that a significant job already has been done in 2022 to make this happening, because this process takes on averages, and you're here from 7 to 9 months, but it can also take 2 years. And how is this possible? We know which path we should go. Why should also this process so be differentiated between the member states or even by region? And also there you see the very differences about applying to put a charging infrastructure in place publicly, how that can be very different, and how that actually makes it difficult for CPOS to maneuver in this in all these countries in Europe. This we should actually tackle in the first place. We know how to do it. We know which technology. We have one standard for Europe now, so it's one path forward. Take these hurdles away. Make these quick connections possible. Make this procedure of permitting much simpler and make it aligned.
Perfect. Since you mentioned that, which are the countries that present the most challenges in Europe? Philippe, the question is for you.
Yeah, it's definitely the Netherlands. But also keep in mind, I think the Netherlands is also a very good example of planning ahead. And I don't gonna judge the other countries, of course, but the Netherlands said, we have a phase out that by 2030, and they have been really looking on the population. They have a very high population living in condominiums, apartment buildings with little access to private charging, and they have said we have to build out 1.8, I think roughly, million of charging points by 2030. Is this all public charging? No, of course not. This is a mix of AC, DC, private, public charging, semi-public. All the opportunities have been taken in consideration. And with this plan, they are sure that by 2030, 100% phase-out plan is possible. That's where today you will see already that high numbers surpassing 170 roughly 1,000 charging points, ahead of Germany and France. Again, once again, should we compare these numbers as such? Maybe not.
Philippe,
Yes.
quick question for you, or maybe even Sveinung. The overemphasis on supply metrics, what do you think is the appropriate metric to track the advancement in charging infrastructure? Is it a distance or time to charging infrastructure relative to where you're living? Or it's a question I think about a lot.
I found at a certain point with the discussion on the AVERE, it didn't get implemented here. The Commission was actually rather thinking of putting a quote on battery capacity, because if one EV or 100 EVs, we need X number of charging points. But if you have 100 EVs with 100 kilowatt battery packs, or if you have 100 EVs with 40 kilowatt battery packs, you need a very different charging plan to make it happen. And we should rather think in how many EVs have been sold and how much capacity they represent that you need to charge. And that actually, I would even say, we should also consider, do we buy the right vehicle for the right purpose? Do we really need those EVs with 100 and 100 plus kilowatts battery packs? I would tend to say no, it's very tempting, but we know also that average people travel in Europe, it's less than 35 kilometers a day. And then it's all that focus and panicking about the distances and charging and etc. Buy the right vehicle, and then the issues on fitting the purpose of charge infrastructure would be maybe not that overestimated as it is today by many.
Perfect, thank you. So let's continue with Krzysztof. I would like to ask you what incentives does Poland offer for the installation of charging points, and also since Philippe mentioned the AVERE, I would like to know if you think Poland is ready to meet this regulation.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I have to say that we have no subsidies currently, because some program just come to end, and all of money, and that was really a huge amount, because that was around 200 million euros was just spent into the market, and now they are projects are ongoing, and these charging stations are implemented. So I think the total amount of investments that we expect, it's over 1,200,000,000 Polish zlotych in charging infrastructure until 2026. So that's the reason why we don't have now any other subsidy program. I think good point is that around 2 weeks ago we just finished the public consultations for the new subsidy program, but for heavy duty electric vehicles and charging for this type of vehicles, because new government just prepared two subsidy programs, one for vehicles with the total value of program around 1 billion Polish zlotych and 2 billion Polish zlotych for charging infrastructure. And that could be the point to meet the AVERE goals because the amount of percentage of subsidy will be 100% for charging units, for construction works, for grid connection, and I think that could be a solution to meet AVERE goals, especially in the field of charging hubs for heavy-duty vehicles, because there we need more power. It's more than 3 megawatt in 2030, and on the TEN-T network, and in Poland mostly stops for vehicles are totally in the middle of nowhere, because for the first grid connection where we can just make some grid connection for our charging stations is around 4 kilometers from this place, 14 kilometers, maybe more, and total cost of investment for grid connection will be much higher than investments in charging points. So I think we have a good plan, but this plan should be turned into the force immediately, because on April, AVERE will be just turn it into the force for every EU country, and time is ticking. And so for countries from Eastern Central Europe is I think really challenging in some reasons, because the implementation of the infrastructure now is rapidly growing, and that's a pretty good point. But for heavy-duty electric vehicles, we have nothing. No public. Last month there were open first public charging hub for heavy-duty vehicles. So we have one.
Okay, thank you. And Sveinung, I would like to ask you also, how are you seeing the incentives in Norway, and if you are ready to meet the AVERE?
Yeah, I think we're quite ready to fulfill AVERE because we're so far ahead already. So I think we're high with AVERE. As I said, the support for infrastructure is very small compared to purchase support of EVs. And I think now for charging, incentives have moved from passenger cars to commercial vehicles. And we are now rolling out charging infrastructure for trucks, which is similar to what we did for passenger cars 10 years ago. And the high adoption rate for passenger cars we see in Norway, it's currently around 90% of all new passenger cars are battery electric. We don't count plug-in hybrids as EVs, and but it's mainly due to our high taxes on polluting cars and our VAT exemption for cars below 43,000 euros. So that's our main vehicles in driving the adoption. But this is driving us to 100% next year.
Okay, thank you. Philippe, what do you think would happen if these targets of the AVERE are not met?
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually a good question or not, because the targets of the AVERE, it's a whole procedure that goes through the European Union principles. It has been a Commission proposal. It has been approved by the Parliament after, of course, some corrections. And finally, the Council also approved it. So all the member states have agreed with the AVERE. And I suppose that they all have been reading it and know what they have to do. So if they don't comply, there is always a penalty system, but it would be awkward because they agreed by principle in the first place. Now, also some aspects don't maybe overestimate it, because like on the fast charging aspect for the 10T core networks, it's not as extensive as some people want to believe. If you see the impact, for example, for Denmark, it's very limited. And on top of that, some of the countries are actually fulfilling the AVERE requirements. And we already talked about the Netherlands. For the Netherlands, it's already done. If I say many years ago, I don't have the exact time now. But for them, it's just okay. The AVERE is there. We have to comply with certain new aspects like card payment options, but the number of charging public charging points is already for them a done case. So it's rather on the details, and for some countries to catch up. That's definitely true. I want to pick up also on the incentives that are mentioned. We may not forget there have been incentives in the past for developing charge infrastructure, public charging infrastructure on the T-Core network. And that budget was not used at all. And it was a significant gap that was left by the Commission. And there was many reasons pointed out that the demand or the conditions to meet on achieving the subsidies have been outdated by the technology development. And this has been now revised by the Commission, and I hope that the outcome will be in a positive way, that we can again have subsidy schemes, for example, for heavy-duty vehicles. So I'm looking forward to the final proposal, and that the amount also will be available again.
Okay, thank you very much. Ivan, I would like to ask you, considering that Cityfi is established in the Netherlands, what concerns do you observe in the charging sector, or which problems could you have maybe in a short future?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many problems, so many challenges, and CPOs. It's a very difficult business. I won't go to things like uptake time or cybersecurity. I think there's that's a whole nother panel. I do want to talk about something that is a little bit more recent, and it's been in the news. I think Philippe probably has heard about this. The Netherlands is unique in that it's a bit of a victim of its own success. The Dutch power grid essentially can't really handle the rapid pace of electrification that's going on, or transportation electrification that's going on, and the number of charging points that are being put into place. A couple days ago, there was a rather eyebrow-raising article, and the headline said something like, Dutch grid manager is going to turn off public chargers between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. And it's a bit of a shocking headline, but it's really a policy direction that is being seriously considered, which is surprising that we're at this point now. What does that mean? I've read that something like 3,000 neighborhoods in the Netherlands are at some point in the next couple of years not going to be able to install new charging infrastructure. And even in places like, or well-equipped places like Amsterdam, Utrecht, some of their major customers not going to be able to see grid connections for 1.5 to 3 years. So there's a lot of innovation and solutioning that's needed to overcome some of this demand-based problem. Obviously, smart charging is one of the key opportunities. Things like demand-based grid management, things like energy storage. These are new technology, or this is new technology that needs to be put in place both for new and existing chargers. vehicle to grid technology is really critical, both an opportunity for innovation and investment. We need cars and other modes that are essentially little mobile batteries that store energy to postpone charging. Demand-based policies are probably going to come into place. Things like managing for the frequency of charging, managing for pricing, some focus on good old-fashioned behavior change and making sure that people are using common sense so that they're not overdoing it with the charging. And then, I think the Dutch and a few other countries throughout Europe are a little bit unique in the sense that they take a much more multimodal approach. It's probably the greatest element of the Dutch charging strategy, in my opinion. They are not putting all their eggs into just the electrification basket. They have spent significant money on putting out robust transit and cycling networks so that you don't have to use your car for all your trips, or even like 75% of your trips. I think this is a really effective and efficient and cheap way to distribute and elongate charging demand over time. So thinking about the other modes, not just the charging infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. And Krzysztof,
yes, may I pick up on that element of the Netherlands, because that's really had hit the press in very different directions. And there is one aspect that we may not forget. Grid operators are not allowed to shut down things they cannot control behind the grid. They really won't like to do that, to have away that stress on their grid. But European legislation is very clear on that. If not, they would say, yeah, but your household, your heat pump is now consuming too much, we switch it off. It's out of question. So it will be indeed a demand and a coordination of, I would say this would be a coordination of smart charging, but it should be rather done in a way that also stimulating people from when to charge, also maybe for home, but also publicly, that it's linked with the demand side, and that it's also maybe with the financial intensive. When there is too much wind energy, why not charge cheaper and allow people also to profit from this? Mm-hmm. But when the demand is too high, you maybe pay a bit more, or significantly more, that I will leave in the middle, but that you can also control it from that way. But switching off is not allowed.
Okay, thank you. And Krzysztof, regarding Poland, how long does the process take to enable a charging point, for example?
My internet connection is for a moment. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, in the case of Poland, which stage or processes takes the longest for enable charging points? Oh, he's away. Okay, I will continue with Sveinung while we fix that. Sveinung, do you think it is important to require that charging stations, both slow and fast, integrate credit card payment terminals?
Yeah, so this is a new requirement of AVERE now coming into force from April, and we have been very positive to this. We've been pushing for credit card payment for many years, and we're happy to see this now as a mandatory requirement, both in the EU and in Norway. We were actually a little bit ahead of the EU. We introduced this requirement from 1st of July last year, and all new fast chargers has to come with a credit card payment option. And we have not pushed for mandatory credit card payment on slow chargers. I think this is important when you're on the road, on a fast charge, that you don't need to sort of enter into new memberships, register your credit card over and over again whenever you get a new charger and you're on your way, you're on hurry, you're on a long trip, you don't want to spend time. I think it's easy to buy whatever you want to buy with a credit card, and you can. And it makes a lot of sense that you also can do that now for fast charging. But of course, this will take some time to roll out also. And I think after it's by 2027, it will also be for the existing chargers everywhere. Now, we're happy with this.
Perfect. Okay, since Krzysztof is back, I would like to ask you, the question was, taking into account that the procedures for enabling charging points often take time, I would like to ask you if in the case of Poland, which stage or process takes the longest? And how long does this take, usually?
I'm so sorry. Probably I wouldn't be able to answer for questions because of my internet connection. It's something really wrong, and I'm so sorry.
It's
Maybe
no
we can
problem.
jump to another speaker.
Yes.
And maybe for a moment will be better. Sorry, I didn't hear anything.
Okay, no problem. Then Philippe, changing a little not the topic, but speaking about buses and trucks. What trends do you observe in the recharge infrastructure for these vehicles?
Oh, it's which type of connector you mean here?
Oh, yes, also.
Yeah, I think we are a bit in the same process that we had with passenger cars, and we see the discussions that we had 10 years ago. Is it feasible? Do we have the charge infrastructure? Can we do the exact kilometers that we want to do? And it's so repetitive, and the answers are coming from the industry, and it's all thanks to the improvement of the battery technology. We can fulfill on this, and if we keep on having the pace of speed on this technology improvement, we will have these answers, a confirmation, but even getting further distances for trucks, and because there's a major question coming from to do buses, certainly in city environments, there is absolutely no issue with the technology that is available today. Now, this also demands specific charge infrastructure, and like for city buses, you maybe don't have to look to a connector standard, but you can do wireless charging, pantograph charging. Which one is the best? I think it will be more structured or given from the industry perspective. On public charge infrastructure, like for trucks in this case, I've seen studies that actually for many cases, the current CCS standard with the 350 kilowatts limitation, I can say, is already sufficient. Because also here we overestimate the average driven kilometers per day of a truck driver. And the study was about Germany, and it was a bit surprising or an eye-opener even for me. That the two standards could live next to each other, I think that will be the reality. CCS and MCS. That definitely will be the standard for Europe.
Perfect. Okay, I will close this panel with that answer because unfortunately we are running out of time. So thank you all very much for participating. It was very interesting to hear your thoughts. For those watching, I invite you to follow us on our social media channels at Mobility Portal Europe and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you want, I invite you to connect with the speakers and with me on LinkedIn. And I invite you to stay for the next panel that will be moderated by my colleague Florencia Guglielmetti. So thank you very much, and also thank you very much for participating. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
has been historically so, and the government decided to use that to give additional incentives, and the electrification of those company cars is really driving the electrification in Belgium. 8 or 9 out of 10 electrical cars are company cars, so that is also pushing the charging infrastructure that we see, and there we see in Belgium a bit two speeds. At the southern region in Belgium has a lot less company cars, and thus also a lot less need and offering of charging infrastructure. Also, the government there is less pushing towards public infrastructure. So also the fast chargers or the semi-public chargers is really lagging behind in the southern region of Belgium. Although in the northern part of Belgium, we even see a bit of an over installation. We have so much installations going on of public and semi-public chargers that we are coming from a bit the lagger in Europe to really the front runner towards amount of charging points per electrical vehicle on the road. So we don't have a real issue at the moment. We can move forward rapidly with the further electrification of those cars. And that's also the expectation for 2024, that a lot of new cars will be electrified this coming year.
Perfect, Sander. Axel, do you agree with Sander? Something to add?
You're muted, I think, Axel.
Yes. Let's see. No, he has problems with his with his microphone. So, well, we can wait a little. We can continue with Austin, and then when Axel finds out what's going on, we can continue with him. Well, the same question for you, Austin. What's going on in your case? Stuart Energy is based in Lithuania. Do you believe that the distribution of charging points in that country is equitable or unequal? And how could governments incentivize the installation of more charging points?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and yeah, it's a very good question to start. So, as Sander said, that Belgium increased, our Benelux countries increased rapid installation growth. So we are definitely lagging behind. We're just starting to build charging infrastructure, I would say. Of course, we do have another problem, but there are not so many EV cars on the roads. So it's like kind of, we have to match EV car grow with the infrastructure grow. But we do have a subsidies similar as Sandra said for business cars. So we have a subsidy that companies do not have to pay VAT taxes if they are buying a passenger car up to 50,000 euro. So it's quite growing in terms of EV car sales, and also we are having subsidies to increase AC and DC charging network. Public one and private one as well. So for end users, for companies, all different kind of and layers of the subsidies are present. And I would say that there, in terms of percentage, they are from 30 to 60%. So it's and even in some cases even higher. So it's a good amount of money to create an infrastructure right now. And so this is the main motivation that drives the EV charging point operators business, I would say, or I believe
quite optimistic with the future of infrastructure. I don't know, Axel, if you have fixed your microphone. Let's see. No, I don't think so. Well, no, but we will do it. I promise that we can fix that. But well, we can continue. I would like, meanwhile we wait for you, I take advantage of this moment to invite you to follow us on our social networks. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I also invite you to like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our community is growing every day, and it's really nice to see how this company grows. So well, we are very happy to invite all to join to our community. Let's see, Axel, if we have luck. No. No, well, it can happen. We are live, so I am going to continue with the next round, and then I will do all the questions that we have in our list. Well, I'm going with Sander now again to talk about the challenges of the charging infrastructure. That's also a question that would be for the three of you. I would like to know what challenges does the charging infrastructure sector face in the country and across Europe?
AVERE is a big topic at the moment in Belgium, like in most countries, I guess, especially for the public and semi-public infrastructure. That there's coming some new legislation also in Belgium because of AVERE, and we as a charge point operator are of course very focused on that. For us, there's still some unclarity also how the Belgian government will translate those AVERE regulations into Belgian regulations, and especially we are very looking forward, but also a bit anxious on all the new requirements, ad hoc payment methods that are also technically feasible. We've been installing charging stations quite some years already, so there's also some quite legacy infrastructure. So just to bear in mind. Also for the government, it's important that we don't the first movers, that they don't have a disadvantage because of this new legislation.
You have mentioned AVERE, then we were going to discuss more about that topic, but I would like to know also the view of Austin. So what can you add to this discussion of what Sander has said?
Yes, so I believe the situation that the network is just in the development stage. So we are like pretty aware of the new regulations, and I think that companies who are building the network are meeting them or trying to meet. Of course, it increased capex, but and opex from another perspective. But yeah, but still, we do not see it as a major problem. We see that one of the main reasons. Not to invest or to invest later to the charging points is grid connectivity, and especially for let's say public infrastructure, because we have old grid infrastructure and want to go electric with e-buses and other passenger cars, so it requires high capacities. And another topic related with also the grid infrastructures is heavy duty charging, which also requires, and I believe that Alex could add something here with mega charge, because I was watching a panel before, at Krzysztof, someone from Poland said that they do not have any public heavy-duty charging points. So we in Lithuania, and I believe in all about Baltics, having the same situation. Non-mega chargers are present, and I'm pretty aware that we are not, like, even in the next years will be present here. So for depot charging or heavy, like, fast charging, but not dedicated with the highest potential. We do have some quite many projects under development, and I believe the situation will be better next year. Yeah, but the main thing that we have to be aware of the availability of grid connectivity, and also in some cases, all the legal procedures are taking quite a lot of time.
Perfect, Austin. We are all crossing fingers because we want to hear Axel. We will see. Is everything fixed? No, I don't know what's going on. It's really weird because you're not mute. So I suppose something with maybe your computer. I don't know. But well, we can wait till then. I will give you like a round follow 3 questions followed.
Does it?
Now we heard you, Axel.
We heard you.
Otherwise, I speak twice the time on Belgium if you want.
Yes, we got there. Thank you. I'm so glad you hear me.
Perfect. Wait, because I have 2 questions for you, because so we are going with both. The question of the round 1 was about if you believe that the distribution of charging points in your country is equitable or unequal, and how could governments incentivize the installation of more charging points? And if you want to add something about Sander has already said.
No, Sander's point was really correct. We're working in 3 areas, we should say, in Belgium. We have Flemish region, we have the Walloon region, and we have Brussels, where we see a big difference in speed of development. The main issue, I think, is, as Sander said, most of the electrification of our fleet is driven by professional use and tax incentives to go electric. However, what we do see also is that in the Walloon region, so the French-speaking part of Belgium, the throughput times and the costs related to development of fast charging infrastructure, for each case that's what we specialize in Belgium, that the cost and the throughput time is way longer, which doesn't really facilitate the further growth of public charging points in that area. In the Dutch-speaking part, the Flanders area, indeed, we see that there is quite a rapid growth in charging points, but this is coupled to a strong growth in professional EV usage. More and more we see also that with the low emission zones that have been implemented, that in-city transport, even heavy duty transport, is going electric as well. So these are incentives that we do financially, but also regulatory incentives that are given through our governments in order to facilitate the rapid growth of charging points.
And now we were talking about the challenges, the other challenges that, of course, there are. And what do you think? What are the main challenges that the charging infrastructure sector face in the country and across Europe?
When we look at the Dutch market, I followed the previous panel. In the Dutch market, it's clear that the congestion is a big issue. So there's no more grid availability to supply our chargers. Also, when we look at the adaptation curve of electric vehicles, we see that the early adopter is gone, and now we're more looking at how can we install reliable, available equipment and keep the price of the kilowatt hours at a steady, low pace. So the integration of the different technologies, being renewable energy, battery technology, and also, of course, a good grid connection, is something which we have to invest in order to decouple from the risks that exist on the energy market today. Yeah, we're still here. So if we look at what are the challenges today, it's mostly how can we create those ecosystems, let's say, and how can we get the different parties collaborating in order to have a reliable infrastructure.
Perfect, Axel. Now we can continue with our next round. Normally, I would like to go with Sander now, because I would like to know more about Pluginvest. This is a moment to talk about a little more about your company. I understand that Pluginvest plans to add 50 more locations with DC chargers during the 2024. How will you take this project forward, and do you plan to install more?
Definitely, those 50 is only one partner of us, a retailer company that wants to add fast charger hubs also on their parking lots. We work as a one-stop shop for companies that want to electrify their fleet or their properties. So we also do a lot of installations at home or at the offices. And the semi-public or retail locations is a third focus area for us. So yes, definitely we will add a lot more charging stations. We talk about a couple thousand a year that we do, and we will continue to grow as does the market. The expectation is that about 200,000 new electrical vehicles will be put on the road in Belgium. So that gives a lot of new requests and demand for charging infrastructure at home, at work, or on the roads. And we want to serve the three as a one-stop shop company.
Perfect, Sander. And in your case, Austin, I would like to talk about the CPOs. How does Stuart Energy enables CPOs to reduce costs and increase profits? And why should CPOs choose Stuart Energy? That's the moment for your company.
Yeah, short break. So Stuart Energy is aiming to secure abundant EV charging process. So how we are doing that. We are working in two parallel ways. One way is facing a grid connectivity problem. So we do have very extensive load balancing solutions, as well as we can integrate storage system to support the grid connection in capabilities. So it's one part, and another part that we are strongly focusing on securing the uptime of EV charging. So we are implementing AI-powered service tool to help technicians to solve problems faster and to increase the uptime of the charging points. So this is our main topics that we are working now. We had developed EV charging stations ourselves, but we sold the technology last year, and we are now focusing on the software part. So we help to extend the network and with the lowest cost possible. This is our aim, and to secure the availability of the charging
Perfect.
station.
We will be following the projects of Stuart Energy this year. And Axel, I would like to know, also it's like the moment of mega charging, this question. I understand that mega charge is leading in Belgium on truck and bus charging. What are the main challenges of logistic bus companies to go electric? And I would like to know also, why do they work with mega charge?
Great. So indeed, thank you. We are leading in buses and trucks. What we do at Megacharge is we make fast charging easy. What we see today is that bus and also truck logistic players, let's say, they get a lot of knowledge through the supplier of the vehicles in what type of car should you use, what is the battery technology that you should use, and also give an indication what is the charging power that you need on site in order to have a business that works with an electric fleet. However, what lacks in knowledge is how do we go about designing and installing reliable fast charging infrastructure without going too big in those infrastructures, without designing a too large connection to the grid, which in some cases isn't even available. But also, how do we make sure that the business case is something constantly monitored, and how can we make sure that we give a high availability of those infrastructures and keep the price of the kilowatt hours low? And as I mentioned before, we bring the knowledge to those companies to see, okay, what is your specific need for charging infrastructure? How many kilowatts do you need? How are we going to go about with the load balancing? Which buses, which trucks come at which time? How much max power do you need? What is the load curve of those specific vehicles? And then thirdly, how can we make sure that we all know that we have had an energy crisis where the prices of electricity rose exponentially. This is a large risk for such kinds of companies who really need to have not only a low but a steady price in order to plan multiple years ahead. So through the integration of not only solar energy or renewable energy, let's say battery technology, but also PPAs, we can make sure that they can invest in the electrification of their fleet with an ease of heart. This is why actually they work with Megacharge. Is we go one step further, not look at the total power, let's say, but how can we, with the available the available grid connection, with the available technology that we have, how can we make sure that we are a partner with our customers and really have a multi-year plan that follows their own electrification of the fleet?
Perfect, really, really clear, Axel. Now I would like to go with Sander to talk about the charging, AC and DC. How do you see the evolution of AC charging compared to DC charging? And also I would like to know, how do you envision electric vehicle charging in the near future?
Both AC and DC are complementary. I think we need both to truly electrify our fleet as a society. AC is the best fit, we believe, at home, and I think AC will also remain the standard for slow charging or destination charging. And we see a tendency there towards 11 kilowatts as the max, although a lot of charging stations can give more output of 22. I see a lot of car manufacturers putting a max on the AC charging capability of the car also on 11 kilowatt, and then they combine it with DC charging capability, and there we still see a growth towards higher and higher. We don't know where it will stop. The faster we can get, the better, we believe. If the car manufacturers get it together and they can get to charging speeds of 300 or 400 kilowatts, I truly believe this will also convince the late adopters that range anxiety and fast charging is also a solution for them on the road. And we think that DC charging will also be the standard for on the road charging, and that we also need that to convince the people in case they want to have further traveling distances than the range of their car, that they also can very easily charge their car in 10 to 20 minutes via DC charging with high outputs and high kilowatt outputs.
I take advantage of this question because I would like to know, Axel, for example, I saw you that you were that you agree with him, and also Austin, I would like to know also your opinion. But do you agree with Sandra, Axel?
Yeah.
Both. The question was for both of you. Well, first Austin, and then Axel. It's the same.
Ladies first.
Okay. Yeah. So I agree with Sandra, and also I want to add that I was reading a study that confirmed that on-the-go charging is essential to increase EV charging generally, not EV charging, EV adoption generally, because one of the reasons people are not choosing EV cars is that it's a fear of I don't know, do not have a place where to charge, and the range anxieties. It seems that when we are working in this industry, so for us, it's totally normal. You have to plan your drive. That's it. It's a common standard. But generally, the range anxiety is present, and it's one of the reasons people are not choosing EV cars. Also, I believe that AC charging will be the most common charging for people at home and works, and fast charging is needed just to have on-the-go charging, and of course heavy duty and public infrastructure has to be here, and because otherwise we will not meet EU standards and requirements and goals that we are aiming to.
Something to add?
Yeah, for me, I agree that the healthy mix is what we need. So a combination of AC and DC charging. AC, it's mostly at home charging that will be implemented, where we see that and going on to the point of Sander, where you see that there is an evolution in going faster and faster. For me, in each case, for us at Megacharge, we do not believe that fastest is best. What we try to achieve is that it doesn't bring an extra hurdle to drive electric. What I mean by that is when you place those DC fast chargers at a retail location where the customer stays for half an hour, give or take, you don't need a 300 kilowatt charger where the car is already full after 10 minutes. So there you can see, okay, the 150 kilowatt perhaps or 180 kilowatt destination charger is perfectly all right. So that's why we always try to match the use case with the power on that we make available with the chargers. Moreover, where I also believe is that we can make a big difference is in the city environment, where people don't have an availability of space to park their car in front of their own house, or even on larger charging points. We see also there a large interest of DC charging. But the main issue of DC charging has been in the past, how can we make it affordable? Because the prices of DC fast chargers, of course, are quite high. So there, with Megacharge, we work on as well that we make fast charging easy by reducing the price significantly, by leveling out the cost for AC and DC charging, and thereby also making sure that the customer doesn't experience a hurdle to use DC chargers in their day-to-day activities.
And as an engineer and sitting in the sector or having experience in the sector, I agree that faster is not always better. Even AC charging often is sufficiently for the end user, but it's also a bit of a mind game. Like Asta said, we also need those public DC chargers to convince everybody to start driving electric. They need to see that the infrastructure is there. That's also why we are putting AC chargers at home and at work more reactively after people have bought a new car, and DC chargers publicly are put proactively in the market. People, governments or companies are investing upfront before people start driving electric. We also need that to convince the others to start driving electric. And after they have started driving electric, perhaps they won't charge as much DC as they thought before, but we need them to convince them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I think that this is a really interesting debate, and we can be hours talking about this as well. We have to continue with the other questions. So now going with Austin to talk about, I would like to know which CPOs is Stuart Energy working with, or have you worked with? And I would like to know also some successful stories.
Yeah, so we are targeting small and medium size companies, different ones, pretty much local. So I don't know if I need to name the names, but also we are working not only with CPOs but with integrators. Some cases, so our main success stories actually are with them because we helped companies to how to put it. To create OCPP backend into the charging stations, because one of our biggest clients we won a tender chose, I would say, not the best hardware solution, and that hardware solution didn't meet the tender's requirements. So we help producers of a hardware to put everything according to create firmware according to OCPP requirements, and still helping them to update and meet them. And also, yeah, so we are kind of a tech savvy, not only from the software perspective, but also from a hardware perspective that I also mentioned before. So we had a couple of similar stories.
Yeah, perfect. Austin, I would like to know about something else about Megacharge. I know that one of the last projects you work on was with Thermatrucks. What did this project involve, and are you working with other e-truck companies?
Yes, yes, indeed, we are. Thermatrucks is a truck reseller of Volvo trucks, which is our customer base in the western part of Belgium, where you have many port areas, let's say. They experienced a limited grid connection. They are a front runner with Volvo trucks with the electrification of the product offering that they bring, and they had some questions from their market as well. First, they wanted to have a functioning, good partnership with somebody like Megacharge to not only see if their own installation, their own company cars, their own test vehicles or electric trucks were being able to charge on a fast manner, but also once they have had this experience, they get a lot of questions from the market, from their own customers. Okay, you can give me a truck, but how do we go about with charging? So we help them as well in putting more electric trucks into market, because they lack a little bit that experience to take the customer from an ICE perspective, where it's all relatively known, towards a new situation where you have your truck, but you need your charging infrastructure to work as one, and that is where again we bring that consultancy, we bring that knowledge in order to facilitate them in selling more electric trucks. Other companies, truck companies, we are working with logistic players who have a large electric fleet. Now large, we have to put this in relative terms. They have 5-6 electric trucks. With the cost of such an electric truck in mind, that's quite a number, let's say. But they are looking at how can we develop strategic charge points for trucks in order to facilitate not only intercity transport but also between cities. So really have the mid-long travel, let's say, and there we are looking at the right locations to develop those things, and also they can invest in those infrastructures themselves, or we take over the whole investment. We supply the truck charging points, we supply the grid connection, battery, the whole e-hub, let's say. The only thing we also get is that they have a minimum purchase of electricity daily at a very competitive price.
Perfect. Thank you, Axel. I would like to open the debate again because I would like to talk about the AVERE. Sander mentioned it before. And well, if you want to say something when someone is talking, you can raise your hands and you can talk. It's okay. I would like to know for the three of you, if you consider the goals outlined in the AVERE achievable, and what challenges does this regulation pose for the sector? I start with Sander, and then we continue.
Yes, I do agree with the principles in AVERE. We do see, like I said before, some challenges in getting it translated into Belgian legislation, and it's a bit becoming late. AVERE 1st of April is becoming a deadline, and we still have no very clear view on how it will be organized in Belgium, which is a bit late. We need a bit more perspective, I think, as a sector. With a lot of enthusiasm and innovation, we can solve a lot of challenges, also legislation challenges. But the government should give us a bit more time to also change perhaps our technology or the solutions that we offer to the market. And then specifically, we talk about the ad hoc payment methods. I think for countries where the public charging infrastructure still needs to be built, and there's no real issue, and we have technology in the sector that is perfectly compliant with all the ideas and the regulation that is put into AVERE. But of course, we also have quite some legacy hardware in the market. And we should also give those front runners in the market a bit of breathing space, I think, to also comply or change their solutions in the market. And as a last one, we see some lobbying going on from the banking world and some others, perhaps to also take a part of this new sector, a very promising sector, with their payment methods. We, I think, as a sector, developed our own payment solutions with RFID and others. I think we shouldn't go back in time to sort of say to go back to the old methods. There are new solutions, software solutions. We all have mobile phones to tackle also a bit of the low threshold the government wants to put on ad hoc payment methods. So it's a call for the governments to embrace also those new innovations, and that we keep an open mind also to further incentivize innovation in the future.
Really, really clear, Sander. Austin, what about you? Let's see.
Just a second. Yeah. So I would say the same. I would agree with Sander that these all POAs, ad hoc payment devices are a bit too much from my perspective, because I believe that, of course, there are too many mobile applications on the market. So I think that everyone agrees on that. On the other hand, to have devices installed in the charging points, it increases the capex and opex of the charging infrastructure. So it's one thing. And another thing that it's more place where charging process can be not secured. Another place, like payment terminals can be broken, and etc. So from the user perspective, end user perspective, so yeah, maybe it's a bit more convenient than to have 101 mobile application. But from the let's say infrastructure perspective, it's a bit not so convenient. And another thing that I also I think that Lithuania, at least, and all the Baltic countries will have that, since we do not have a huge base of EV charging infrastructure present. So for us, it will be a very, very difficult process to install so many chargers that are required to meet AVERE. So I think that we have to speed up with this. And maybe if we will speed up, maybe we will be successful. But I have strong doubts about that, actually.
Perfect, Austin. Axel, you have the biggest challenge here, because you have to add something else of Sander's and Austin answers, and also you have to close this round and this panel, because we are running out of time. So You have
How much
a
pressure?
responsibility.
How much pressure? No, I can agree with both panel members here. I do have a small question, perhaps, to both panel members. Today, we have some DC chargers in the market where we have the availability of ad hoc payment already installed. It's a minority part, but still, do you see that those what is the most used method of payment today? For us, it's important to have an easy experience, of course, fast charging made easy. But I don't think in this day and age that there's such a burden, let's say, that still is in the market, that you need 3, 4, 5 eMobility, EMSP cards, and that you really need to have such stringent regulations, let's say, about the installed base in the market as well. So my question, and perhaps as we can end on that, is: do you see that those payment terminals are used a lot today?
Perfect. That is a really nice question to end this panel. And well, I really appreciate. I really like to thank Axel, Austin, Sander for being here and joining us today. For me, it was a pleasure to talk with you and learn a little more about the situation in Europe. And of course, I also invite you to stay a little longer because there's still one more panel with my colleague Javiera Altamirano about the role of large companies installing charging points. So thank you again, and well, stay, of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, we continue with this International Mobility Portal Summit. We begin this fourth and final panel of this debate titled The Role of Large Companies Installing Charging Points. Participating in this panel will be Rein Juriado, Policy Officer at the European Commission, Asif Ghaffur, CEO and co-founder at BEV, and Polina Mikalova, COO at Node. Hi everyone, it's nice to stay here with you. So unfortunately, Luca Rossini, CEO and co-founder of Rossini Energy, had an issue and will not be able to connect. But let's start with the first round of questions. Remember that this is a debate, so you can interrupt the other speaker and to add ideas. So I would like to start with Rein. Rein, I hope you are well. What initiatives is the European Commission working on to promote the installation of charging points in Europe?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. I should say that I am replacing a colleague who has been working in this unit with these questions for a long time. I joined the European Commission 1 month ago exactly. So if I don't have all the answers, it's just to let you know that you can always get in touch with us, and if there's something that you wonder about. But to answer your question, I mean, obviously, the first thing that the Commission does is legislation, is the policies. We have the Fit for 55 package with different legislative measures. Obviously, the one that most people now are talking about is the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, AVERE, which will start to apply from mid-April this year. So of course, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of questions that are related to that we are handling. And obviously, I mean, for those of you who were in the previous debate, you probably also already heard in a discussion that we had in the last debate about it. But basically what this regulation does is to establish national targets leading to the deployment of sufficient number of alternative fuels infrastructure in Europe, and this covers then road vehicles, trains, vessels, and stationary aircraft. So it sort of provides the technical specifications, requirements on user information, data provision, and payment requirements. So that sort of legislation is sort of what people think is sort of perhaps the main point, but what the Commission also does is to provide, for example, funding. And in this respect, it's a very fortunate day, I must say, because just today the Commission has published a new call for tenders within its funding mechanism, the CEF, the Connecting Europe Facility Transport program, has an alternative fuels infrastructure facility. And that new round of calls for proposals has actually just opened today at midnight. So I should definitely encourage everybody to look at opportunities there, because we have shifted around a little bit the priorities, and there are some new funding opportunities, for example, for megawatt recharging stations for heavy duty vehicles. There's also electricity and hydrogen supply at airports, and electricity supply and ammonia and methanol bunkering in ports. There's €1 billion that will be available, and there will be 3 cut-off dates. I mean, I will not give you all the details, but just to know that financing is also a very important part of the Commission toolbox, so to speak. And I would say the last bit is really sharing knowledge and sharing data, because I think we are all very much dependent on having the good quality information when we are, as a company or as a private individual or as a policymaker, we are taking decisions as to whether to invest in a electric vehicle or how to do it. So there is a portal that the European Commission is managing, which is called the European Alternative Fuels Observatory. You find it under eafo.eu, so European Alternative Fuels Observatory. And that provides different kinds of information. So, I mean, useful for, as I said, for private individuals, companies, and policymakers. So I would say it's these 3 that are kind of the fundamental components by which the European Commission is working towards electrification.
Okay, Rain, thank you very much. We are going to look at this information. Hi, Paulina, how are you? It's nice to see you again. Could you tell us what is not and what is currently working on the company?
Well, hello everyone. I think I will change a little bit the register from most of the things that have been said last 3 days, because NOT is working not with the car charging, but with the bike and scooter charging. So we build and operate docking and charging infrastructure for light mobility. Like, let's define light mobility. It's bikes, scooters, cargo bikes. We can call them two-wheelers. We can provide the full mobility service, including the vehicles, the application, the charging stations, or sometimes we can just provide the stations when the corporates or the city just need the stations. Well, we work with 3 different groups of clients, with the cities, of course, with the operators who are looking for infrastructure, but of course with the large corporates, and that's the topic of today. The current projects, I would say I would highlight one, which is very new for us. We started just a few weeks ago working on the cargo bikes. So integrating in our docking charging infrastructure also the possibility to charge and lock the cargo, which opens a huge market for us with a number of possibilities. So for example, our first projects with this model will be for construction companies who are looking for new methods to deliver materials on inside the construction site, or the car sharing company who will use it also to clean the vehicles during the daytime, because it's easier to clean and maintain the fleet with the cargo bike than with a car.
Okay, thank you, Paulina. We are going to talk more about this next. Then, Asif, how are you? It's nice to see you again. Could you tell us what project is BEV working on, and if you are planning to install new charging points?
Yeah, so good afternoon. Yeah, as Paulina says, I feel like old school now, which I thought would never happen. But I'm in the electric vehicle charging world, and our focus as a business is really focused in building public charging infrastructure in the UK. So we're building that on local authority government land and also on private land. So we have the best approach for us is to think about where the end customer is going to go and how the end customer is going to use the charging and how the end customer, this fits into the end customer's lifestyle and the way they operate, and then build the infrastructure to really support that behavior. So we're building across the UK. We started our life in Greater Manchester, which again in the UK is very rare because everyone always starts in London. We started in Greater Manchester. People do live here. There's 3 million people. So it's a great market to start and test. And we worked with the local administration and the mayor's office here. But then we've gone out across the rest of the country to build out the infrastructure and fundamentally make sure it works, because that's an important thing. People are focused on numbers. We're focused on making sure that the customer experience is 100% right.
And as if BEV has installed chargers for Decathlon, for example, have they worked with other large companies? And what are these large companies looking for when installing the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles?
It's interesting with the large companies. What we're interested in is the location of that company. So it necessarily isn't. We're not looking and going, oh, Decathlon's a great partner to be working with. And while we're there, we can pick up some cheap sports goods as well, which is always a positive. But actually, the locations of where their stores are in the UK are amazing. One of the big ones, actually not far from where I'm sitting now in Greater Manchester, is around the M60. It's a very busy ring road. It's probably the second busiest after the M25 around London. And so customers will use the charging. The local community of people will use the charging, and the passing traffic who are going from city to city. And so that's important to us to find those type of locations. We're working with garden centres, dobbies, we're working with very large property funds, we're working with a lot of local authorities, we're working with car washes is a good example, national chain of car wash called IMO. And the car washes are great because they're always in high traffic, busy sites. So therefore, you're going to get a lot of passing traffic. And again, fitting that into people's lives rather than putting the right speed. So a lot of these sites are typically getting rapid, ultra rapid charging because people are dwelling for a short period of time. And that's the right speed to be putting in.
Okay, thank you, Asif. And Paulina not has its infrastructure installed in park lots, banks, and hotels. What has the experience been like, and what are these companies looking for when installing the infrastructure for scooters and e-bikes? Sorry, Paulina, can you turn on the mic? Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, so to complement on what Asif was just saying, because you are focusing, if I understand right, mostly on the public charging infrastructure, while we can provide, in some cases, we provide the public network for scooters and bikes. And in some cases, in many cases, when we work with corporates, we provide them the charging infrastructure and the vehicles for their personal use, inside use, in-campus use. So these are two completely different situations. And while in the first case, when we provide them the infrastructure, they're looking to, support the CSR green initiatives to complement the public mobility. For example, we have large banks working with us in the city of Strasbourg. For them, it's good to support this kind of initiatives because they also want to be on the green side. Or when we work with the public transport authorities, they look to attract more customers. But when we're talking about the mobility for their campuses, of course, it's completely different arguments, because here they are looking for incentives for the employees, because bikes facilities make happy workers, make happy people to go on work. They can save money because instead of walking, I don't know, 2 kilometers from one end of parking lot to the main building, they can just take a scooter and then it will be much faster. So that's a great advantage for them. And yeah, that's and then also for hospitality business, they attract new groups of clients because, well, there is a bike, there is the same hotel without bikes. I'll take one with the bikes because it's a complete complementary advantage for us. So these are for the advantages, how for them to work with us. On more logistical side, I would say, of course, it's easier working with the corporates than the public sector because it's easier to get the location. It's easier also to finance the initiative. We have pricing quite low for the corporates, so it's quite advantageous for them. There are some negative sides as well working with them as an experience because you never know to whom you should talk to. Either it's HR representative, or you have to talk with the CSR, or you have to talk with the marketing division. It's always different people in the corporates, and in some cases, they also often see it as an expense and not as an advantage. So they see it, okay, we have to spend a lot of money to put bikes, but we never will get money from it because they see it as a business unit, which is not always the case.
And in a lot of our sites, we actually we pay for the infrastructure, so the power comes to the site. So very early on, one of the things we were quite interested in was bringing companies like Paulina's company alongside, because I've got power for electric vehicle charging. Why not put bike and scooters? It's a power source, so why not generate as much activity around that power source, because people are pulling on it at different times, and so you're creating a much better balanced environment. But I agree with the advantage of the government administrations is you get a bigger scale, but it takes a lot longer. And but we've done work with universities and with hotels as well, where we've just gone in. But the problem is, the more layers you go in, you're already going into a market where it's very complicated because it's electric vehicles. What the hell's that? Then they're like bikes and electric bikes and scooters. Oh my gosh, all these questions around that. If you try and add too many things in one go, it just becomes too much for some vision and that. And so we've ended up taking a step back, but I would love to be doing all of this combination.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the transportation hub discussion, which are starting now. Actually, in the UK, they're much more forward than in many other countries. So, but I agree with you, it's just taken forever, and maybe one day we will work together.
So Paulina comes from France and Asif from UK. Where are you based, Rain?
So I'm based in Brussels, where the European Commission has its seat. Personally, I was born in Estonia, but I lived in Sweden for many years. So I just relocated from Stockholm to Brussels 1 month ago.
Okay, so Rain, which countries have made the most progress in installing charging points in Europe? Do you think this leadership is due to governmental incentives?
I mean, maybe before I sort of mention any specific countries, just to say sort of it's maybe important to mention first that there's been a massive growth. I mean, both globally and in Europe. I mean, we talk sort of 4 or 5-fold growth in the last 4 years in terms of the charging infrastructure. So it's really exploded in the last 4 to 5 years. And then it's to your question about sort of which countries are the front runners. I mean, obviously, some of the countries that are bigger that have sort of maybe more resources in terms of investing. You will see France and Germany and France. They are sort of in the lead, but actually Netherlands is the country that has the highest number of installed charging points in Europe. And if we look at sort of the growth in the number of charging points, then also these are the top 3 countries: Netherlands, Germany, and France. But then if you look at sort of the growth in percentages, you also get countries like Belgium and Denmark and Greece and Finland that are making very good progress in the last year. But again, it depends a little bit on which metrics you you look at. If you look at the charging power per vehicle, then actually Bulgaria and Slovakia are in the lead, because maybe they don't yet have so many electric cars or electric trucks available in those countries. Government incentives, definitely. It's definitely an important part. And I mean, from the European Commission side, we definitely see that having different kinds of mechanisms in place. I mean, they can be incentives, but they can also be other kinds that are sort of policy driven. They can definitely be important in accelerating the development. I mean, we've heard, from the other speakers in the panel, also sort of local authorities and also national authorities. They have ways in which they can stimulate this development. But I mean, I would also say that it's also about having the attitudes in the society and having both corporate customers and private customers that can be important for driving the development. I mean, my last job was at a Swedish startup where we've worked with electrification of freight, and we saw that many companies were very keen on electrifying their fleets, but at the same time they were not really willing to pay more for having the freight being transported by an electric truck compared with a diesel truck, because I mean, electric trucks are still about 2-3 times the price of a diesel truck. So you do need to get to address those kinds of capex issues, which are crucial if you want to see sort of this continued development.
And it's interesting on the government intervention, because what we found in the UK, unfortunately we left the EU, so I can't talk about the EU anymore, but in the UK we found government, actually, it can be beneficial but can also slow things down. So at the start, when you need the thing to get going, and trucks is a good example there, or buses, or hard to get areas, rural areas, you do still need more support. But if you then, unfortunately, sometimes a government policy is still in place when you don't need the support. In the UK, there's something like £6 billion of private capital available for infrastructure today, and the government is still rolling out their own policy through into local areas. That's slowing us down now, interestingly. So we've had the opposite problem, where they did a great policy at the start and then it's become slower. But that kind of goes back to the old story of where should everybody play? And I think government should set the strategy, correct the market to get it going, and then take a massive step back and say, you go and now fix it, and then they have to tweak. I think that's a lot better. I don't know if Polina's seen that as well.
Yeah, that's I completely agree, especially with the again, I'm not on the car side, so I can just tell other examples that I have. But we've seen really often that the involvement of the government was counterproductive, because I mean, we had some projects where our system was financed as the experimentation, put it in the brackets, and well, of course, it's a good quick money. I mean, I'm not complaining, not at all. Hope they're not listening. But on the same side, when you have 4 sad, dusty bikes, which are on the level -3 of the parking lot, and nobody using them for 2 years, I mean, the results of the experimentation are disastrous. It's like nobody will ever use them. And in the end, it threatens the industry, because it shows, okay, we tried the bikes, the results was very bad. The government paid for it, so it was not really painful for us. But in the end, it will not change the behavior. It will not change anything, and many companies will be afraid of installing such an infrastructure because of these bad results, because the decision to install infrastructure was taken for a bad reason. It was taken because, oh, it's free, we should take it. But it was not kind of the conscious process. We have to install the bike and scooter sharing infrastructure to make our situation mobility better in the company. So yeah, that's, so for the long-term strategy, they should better think of this, how the money should be delivered to the companies.
And just to replicate on both of you, really. I mean, I've been in this business for 10-15 years, and I mean, I recall the discussions that there were, like 2011, 2012, 2013. Then electrification was really beginning to happen, and there weren't vehicles available, and then it was really the question of chicken and egg. We didn't have the vehicles and we didn't have the infrastructure, and which should come first in order to make that happen. And I think now with AVERE, where we really have the mandatory targets in place for infrastructure, that will really generate the market necessary, I think, for corporates and private individuals, and also local authorities and other players to have that leverage on electrifying, and really sort of that the market will pick up. At least that's my hope. And then, what kind of incentives are, if you look at Norway, for example, where they've had a very, very high level of electrification for many years, that is a different story than compared to a country that maybe hasn't, or has just recently started its electrification journey. So it's really about sort of the local markets and the different segments within those markets, because as you say, I mean, one thing is the scooters, one thing is the private vehicle, like cars, one thing is trucks, buses, etc. And then we don't talk a road. I mean, if we look at the other modes, it's even more complex.
Okay, thank you for your word, for your explanation, Rain, Paulina, and Asif, both of you. And Paulina, in summary, how could more companies be encouraged to install charging points? Like these companies, like hotels, parks, park lots.
Well, I mean, there's more commercial arguments. So when I come to them and trying to sell the product, like, you have four main arguments saying, okay, you have a good image because you will have bike and scooter sharing infrastructure. And it's very cool for your workers. They can get faster on work and also use car less. It's good competitive advantage. It's the good way to attract more customers. It's a good way to have green policy, also to think of the green policy, because in France there are many changes on the CSR, and you can see that now even banks, when they distribute the money to the companies, they also will look onto your CSR rating, like, have you done something for the green mobility, have you done something for the corporate responsibility, and etc. So that's also bringing some other points. And then, of course, it helps to save money also inside the company, because while you have bikes inside the campus, the people move faster, and that's obviously a good advantage. So how to incentivize from the government point of view? Well, what we have in France now, and which is kind of a good advantage, is that if you install some bike infrastructure, the company will get 30% off of their taxes in the year. So that's a great advantage, I think, because it doesn't push too hard on it's really concerns the capex part. It doesn't concern the operational part. So it also gives some responsibilities to the company when they use this advantage. So that's a good one. There are other methods which I don't think that good, but so let's focus on this one to stay brief.
Okay, and Asif, what do you think about this?
Well, our model is slightly different in that we bring the power to the site and then put the chargers in. So that's costing us £500,000 each time we develop a site. And so they own the land. After we take a lease for 20-25 years. When the lease terminates, they will have free power on their land, which we paid for. And by then, power is going to be more like gold dust than it is today. So there's that element. We pay rent they're currently giving away free parking. You go to a decathlon, you don't pay, you just park and go in the store, but they're now getting rent from us for taking those bays. More people will go to that venue, whether it's a hotel or the store, because we're like, oh, while I'm there, I'll get charging and I'll get my running shoes, or I'll go and have lunch in that hotel because they have got charging, rather than that hotel who haven't got charging. And each of those companies can actually offer more incentives to their staff, because in the UK you get a tax reduction if you take a salary car through the schemes, company car schemes, and then they can charge whilst they're at work. And actually you tend to find people feel happier, more productive, much like Paulina. If I could cycle, scooter and bring my EV to work, I'd probably do 10% more work as well. Well, I hope it would anyway.
Okay, and as it could be installed the chargers outside the UK, what challenges do they face when expanding?
Yeah, because we're very capital intensive, for me, I like to do things which I actually understand. And we understand the UK market, the challenges around land, government planning, and power access are the three things which are in the UK that's slightly different in different regions. And that's quite complicated. So I have a team of experts in the business who can work their way through all of that. We tried to do some installations in Northern Ireland, so off the mainland. We found that very complicated and very time consuming and became a distraction, because fundamentally I have, we have a relationship with Octopus Energy Generation. They gave us 110 million to put into the business. That money I can easily spend on really good sites in the UK, in a market I understand, and I know I can roll out at a pace. So for now, we've said, focus on what you're good at, focus on the market you understand, and rather than the vanity of having on the side of our car London, Paris, New York, we're just happy with Manchester, London, and Birmingham for now.
Okay, and what about does not plan to install its infrastructure in other companies or other countries, both inside and outside of Europe?
Well, contrary to Asif, the vanity was a big driver for us, I would say, to have all this, because it's also fun. And the main difference is that, and then I'm also looking to Ryan from the European Commission, that on the light EV market, it's completely different situation. We don't have same protocol for all vehicles. We don't yet have the same battery charger for all vehicles. We don't have the same battery on the vehicles, and that makes the market a complete disaster right now. And the thing is that in the world, we have maybe 3 to 4 or 5 competing companies, and we receive a lot of demands coming from the US, from the UK. We have installations now already in the Maldives, in Uzbekistan. I mean, we're a French company, and we went quite far to install it because, well, the market's still very young and we're in the very early times of development. I know that now there is a regulation investigation going on the chargers, so maybe Ryan could direct me to the right people to talk to about what will be the charger in the next 6 months for the light mobility. So yeah, for us, we focus, of course, on the French market. We have France, Spain, and Austria as our target markets, but we usually accept the demands coming from other countries because we also have to evangelize the light mobility. We have to evangelize the dog-based light mobility, and that's kind of our mission.
Okay, thank you, Paulina. Now we will change the topic. Since Ryan works at the European Commission, I would like to ask him about the AVERE, how is its implementation progressing, and what do you believe is the most challenging objective?
Yeah, it's a good question. So AVERE is gonna start applying from the 13th of April. So it's we're still in the build-up phase where it's companies and countries are getting ready to implement it. Sort of the impression that I have based on my first month here in the Commission is that we have a very good dialogue with the different member states of the EU. We have something called the Sustainable Transport Forum, which has different subgroups where different issues such as, for example, data or implementation-related matters are being discussed. And actually, we are also setting up 3 new subgroups precisely for the issues where we see that things are still evolving very rapidly. So there will be one, for example, on heavy-duty vehicles and one on hydrogen. And these are also open for industry. So I would encourage you to have a look at that. There's still 1 week left to if you want to be involved in those groups. So I guess in terms of challenges, I mean, technology is still evolving, as Paulina was just mentioning about the different technical specifications and lack of standards. I mean, it's things like that where it will be very important to follow the development of the different technologies and also to contribute to to the technical standards and technical specification as they come along, and not to forget sort of the commercial side of things. Not only the technology readiness, but also sort of the market readiness for different types of technologies. So that's something that we definitely will need to work on in the future. What will also happen is that there will be a revision of AVERE in 2026. So by the end of 26. So in about 2.5 years, we will also have sort of a first type of look at or a review of what has been achieved, how are we progressing, what has happened, what has changed in terms of technology. So definitely there will be issues that will look different from what they are today. So I would say that's sort of the view now, but of course there will probably be questions that will come from different market players, and we will try to address those, of course.
And do you think all countries will be able to meet the proposed objectives? And what happens if the AVERE objectives are not achieved?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we definitely believe that the targets will be met by all the countries, because the sort of the underlying idea of having this regulation is that we need to have a common European methodology for setting targets and adopting measures under the sort of national policy frameworks. And I mean, we haven't had this before. I mean, we've had a patchwork of different types of national targets and different measures. So with AVERE, we get a European legislation which will be directly applicable across the EU that will provide that. And of course, there has been a long dialogue with different member states and with industry players. So I would think that there are good possibilities for the objectives to meet or to be met. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rain. Now, Paulina, what is the current situation of the electric mobility in France? What are the topics on the agenda?
Well, again, for the light electric mobility, because I'm not very aware of what happens on the car industry, unfortunately. So the main topic is to help companies. If we also focus on the large corporates, is to help companies to improve their overall balance sheet of how their employees use the bikes. Because, well, I mean, in most of the cases when we move around the city, we go to work or we go from work, and this can have a huge impact on the overall mobility over stock of the country. And there is a measure which is called Forfait de Mobilité, for example, which is around up to 500 euros per year per employee, which is given by the company, tax-free and charges-free, aims to support the people who take the bike or the scooter or the public transport when they go to work. So this is one of the biggest measures. It was a huge success. It's been already a few years it's going on. And I think that was a very good measure to help people. Also, they can buy the bike. They can just use their own personal bike. It's not very strict. You can do a lot of things with this money. And for the companies, it's also a very nice way to give incentives for people who use them like mobility. So that's a big topic. Another big topic is building of the infrastructure, because for us, like charging infrastructure for cars, it's very important, but for bikes and the adoption of the light mobility, the bike lanes and the infrastructure in the city is crucial. And corporates, they play a huge role in this, because on their parking lots, on their private land accessible to the public, they can also build this infrastructure which will be accessible for their employees, but also for the people who doesn't work in the companies, and they have a huge impact also on the infrastructure building in the country. So these are the main topics I get up of.
Okay, thank you, Paulina. Now, Asif, the UK Department of Transport launched a new funding program to increase the number of charging points. Does BEV benefit from this or any other program? What do you think are the shortcomings of this sector in the UK that need to be addressed?
So we have a very clear government approach, which actually I will say 90% of it is very spot on. They get it right. They've been delivering. They've got the market going, and it's helped. The challenge today is that the capital all goes to local authorities, and they have to determine how to spend that money. And then some of that capital has to go into gutter charging, some of it into lampposts, some of it into chargers on the street, and some into car park charging. A challenge for every local authority, and there's something like 350 in the UK, they don't have any expertise in-house. So they receive the funding, but they're not sure what to do with the funding. So that's a challenge. So you end up with a lot of, it's a bit like Paulina's comment earlier on, you end up talking to the HR team, the car parks team, the highways team, the finance team, the environmental officer, and so on, which slows everything down. And we've seen a lot of public sector, public-facing contracts just stopping, and a lot is happening because money is stuck. But in the same time, they have access to land, which we could put our private funding on, and they're not releasing that because they want to sort out their strategy. So the whole thing becomes, I call it the sausage machine, where unfortunately the sausage meat is now popping back out from where you started, and it's all a bit stuck. And which isn't a great image, I know, but that's kind of fortunately what we're seeing a little bit. The government also provided some funding support to motorway fast route locations. That's been very slow in rolling out, which has meant nobody's done anything in the motorway space because they think there's some government capital coming out to support that. But despite all of that, you have got some progressive movement going on. You know, in Greater Manchester, the mayor's office have just got on with it and made decisions and worked in public-private partnerships. We've been working with a lot of private companies, and if you think about it like a map of where people live in certain areas, you can map that out quite easily and find spots of land and go, actually, in a community, if I'm focusing on Birmingham, I can plan that out and say, these are the target areas we should be going to build our network out. So the public sector, the government, I think it sounds like I'm moaning about it, but I think they've done a lot of good and they've done a lot of right things, but driving capital to the wrong speed charging and slowing it all down with lamppost charging, slowing down procurement processes isn't helping. And which goes back to my earlier comment, at some point they need to now step out and let the private sector they set the strategy, we'll deliver it. We're happy to do that bit.
Okay, thank you, Asif. Now the last question is for Rain. Rain, what is your opinion on the reduction of incentives, such as France reducing the eco-bonus and Germany eliminating it altogether? Do you think these are the right measures? Could this potentially harm the domestic industry? What do you think?
It's a difficult question. I mean, because I should say that I cannot comment on the sort of the individual measures in different countries. I mean, Asif was talking about it earlier on in terms of sort of perhaps some of the financial measures are not necessary any longer because there's already sufficient private investment coming into certain segments of the market. So I wouldn't be able to give you sort of sufficiently qualified opinion on the individual countries, because I'm sure that these countries will make the analysis that is necessary for changing the incentives or tweaking them in one way or another. But in general, we see that there is a need of having different types of regulatory and non-regulatory incentives and measures that will sort of contribute to achieving those mandatory targets that are now in the European legislation. But I mean, how you exactly sort of define them and how you scope them is really up to different countries to consider. And I mean, because it's really is an ecosystem change, I would say. I mean, because it's one thing is the vehicles, one thing is the infrastructure, but it's also a lot to do with different kinds of behavior. We talk about shifting from driving into a gasoline station and just being able to fill up your tank, whereas now you need to charge. Depending on what kind of charger you have, this might take more or less time. So how do you plan your activities around that? And I mean, you get questions like social policy, regional policy. There's so many policy aspects that are also related to how the incentives are created. So, sorry, I cannot give you sort of a better answer, but I think it's really important to highlight those different, issues that the policymakers have to consider when they are creating the incentives. So I should stay in that sort of diplomatic note.
And we found in the UK when some incentives that we had a scrappage scheme. So if you had a diesel vehicle, they would give you £3,000 to switch at that time to a petrol vehicle. But actually what you found was the car prices suddenly became £2,000 more expensive. And so actually you only had 1,000. So you think the incentive on paper sounds amazing, but actually the impact was so minimal that at a time when austerity still exists, is that the best use of capital to be giving people who own nice cars another £3,000 to go and buy another nice car? It needs balancing, and sometimes we found on that example that was actually the wrong incentive, even though it felt like the right incentive.
Okay, so I will produce. Sorry, do you make me a question for me?
No.
Ah, sorry, I can hear. I have problems with my microphone. So now I would like to give you 1 minute for closing remarks. Who wants to start?
I think I heard earlier on ladies first, Paulina. I apologize, but that's a cop-out, a total cop-out.
You can't use this anymore. Well, for my side, the remarks would be like, on my business, the most important for us is the regulation and where it's coming. So that's my target, and that's what I'm working now. We need the standard, and we need to have the standard for light EV charging, and I hope it will come. And I hope it will be also coordinated with the EV charging overall, so we can talk about the mobility hubs and not only put stations to charge the cars, but put immediately stations to charge the cars, bikes, cargo bikes, and everything all together. That's my wish. And on the large corporates, maybe the participation into bringing mobility to people. Well, for us, it's a different case than for ZIF, because in our case, they pay for the infrastructure, we install them, but maybe they should be also rewarded by supporting such initiatives and get some incentives, because they work for the public mobility, and instead of spending public money on direct installation of the infrastructure, they go through the company. It also supports the economy overall.
Okay, now Asif.
I'll go next then. I think unfortunately push Paulina in front of the bus very quickly to make her start thinking about it. Apologies on that. But I think for me, there's a lot of noise in the UK from particularly certain sections of political movements around this green policies are rubbish and these are just nanny state and all of this. And I think we've got to remember the fundamentals about the fact that we all want to live in a society with better air, cleaner air, better environment. And if fundamentally people don't want to do that, then there is an environment here where having a nice shiny car is the thing which excites people. Well, all of the future car production and the good cars is going to be in the EV space. But when we build all this infrastructure, it isn't a numbers game. A lot of people get excited. I've got 1,000, I've got 10,000, I've got this. For me, this is all about two main fundamentals. And if we don't get these right, we've got it wrong 100%. One is community. This isn't just building for people who can afford the vehicles today. This network which we're building has to be for the communities of all wealth, all scales, all colors in the future, and building it with that in mind for the mass market. And secondly, the infrastructure has to be what the customer, the consumer wants. And people lose sight of that because they think it's a numbers game or I must get lots of infrastructure in. Think about how the consumer operates. Think about how the customer behaves. This is a major behavioral change for customers, moving from what was previously petrol, very easy, pump away, to something which is kilowatts and all of this exciting new stuff. And we've got to take them on this journey.
Okay, now Ryan, would you like to close this panel?
Yeah, I mean, I could almost say the same things as if finished with, because I mean, as I said earlier on, it's very much about the ecosystem change that we're now seeing with the vehicles, infrastructure, and behavioral change, and happening on a very, very fast pace. And with the European legislation now, I think we have sort of very good preconditions for having at least the infrastructure part in place, and also, following the technological development, having a dialogue with the member states and with industry, I think is also crucial for us, and something that we definitely will continue, because it's going to be essential for the European policy to meet the needs of all different kinds of users, and also having the overall goal of having a society that we all want to live in terms of sustainability and inclusion and other policy objectives.
Okay, Ray, Nasif, and Paulina, thank you for participating in this panel. It has been very interesting discussion, and we will produce news based on this conversation, so stay tuned. Thank you very much for participating in this panel.
Thank you, Mobility Portal teams and the crazy community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi everyone, those who are watching, I wanted to remind you that we will produce news based on these conversations, and I wanted to remind you to follow Mobility Portal Europe on LinkedIn, Instagram, and to connect with me, with Luciano, with Mobility Portal Group and the speakers. Luciano, is there anything else you would like to comment?
Yes, of course. Such a great event we had today. So in case you want to watch it again, or there was a part you couldn't watch, you can find the recording of this live in our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your like in case you liked this content. Also, as Javiera said, you can follow us on social media to stay updated with the latest information of the sector. You can find us on LinkedIn as Mobility Portal Europe and on Instagram as Mobility Portal EU. We are looking forward to our next event on 14, 15, and 16 of May, our International Mobility Portal Summit, Investments by Leading Companies in Zero-Emission Fleets. Also, in June, we are launching the second edition of the eMobility book. This special edition will be about buses and trucks, and this action will come in hand with a virtual showroom about technological innovation and new developments on buses and trucks. Thank you once again for being part of this event. We had 3 days of valuable information and growth for the sector. So we have to thank you all the viewers, the speakers, companies. Also, a special thank you to our sponsors and the team who have been working for this event for months. See you next time.
Thank you. See you.